Chapter 893. How dare you? The King of Eagle interrupted the knight before he could finish reading the letter. The content of the letter was very simple. Liszt had sent a ransom negotiation letter through the official channels of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, asking the King of Eagle to forward it to the Grey Iron family and ask them to send someone to negotiate and pay the ransom. There was no diplomatic channel between the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Grey Iron Duchy. Moreover, the Grey Iron Duchy was located in a remote area, so it was impossible to send a negotiation letter directly. So Liszt decided to ask the King of Eagle to forward the letter on his behalf. It was also a small humiliation. Liszt would not easily let go of the fact that the Grey Iron Duchy had dared to launch a dragon-slaying war. It would not be too late to punish the King of Eagle first. "Your Majesty, this letter," a noble minister reminded the King of Eagle. The King of Eagle widened his eyes and gritted his teeth. Finally, he said coldly, "Seal the letter and send it to the Grey Iron Duchy immediately. Everyone, you are the ministers of the kingdom. The Grey Iron Duchy has lost its Grey Iron Dragon because of the dragon-slaying war. How should we solve this problem?" After a while, a minister replied, "Your Majesty, the loss of the Grey Iron Dragon is a huge loss to the Grey Iron Duchy. But Duke Piero has to be redeemed. The kingdom should preside over the ransom transaction and even make up for the Grey Iron family's loss." The minister seemed to be saying that the ransom should be paid by the Kingdom of Eagle. However, the minister changed the topic. The kingdom should help the Grey Iron family get the Grey Iron Dragon back. But Duke Piero was ambushed after the dragon-slaying war. The Grey Iron family still has to raise the ransom themselves. Duke Piero was captured, so the ransom must be paid. But have you ever thought about what the Grey Iron family will do if the Grey Iron Duchy loses its dragon? Another minister shook his head. "I think the Grey Iron family may take an extreme stance." "What extreme stance?" the King of Eagle asked knowingly. "As far as I know, Duke Piero's son is already 30 years old. He is in the prime of his life and is suitable to inherit the Grey Iron family. Maybe he is not willing to redeem his father. Even if he is willing, the Grey Iron family cannot afford the huge ransom of a duke. Usually, a viscount needed a little elf, a count needed 2 or 3 little elves, a marquis needed a big elf, and a duke needed 3 or 5 big elves. However, Duke Piero Grey Iron was different. He was the duke of a dragon-rearing family. Not only that, he was a Grey Iron dragon who raised metal dragons to produce iron. The family's wealth was much higher than that of a duke without a country, and their status was equivalent to that of a Grand Duke. At the very least, they had to pay the dragon elves as ransom. In his letter, Liszt had also hinted that the dragon sprites must be the keynote of the negotiations. He believed that the Grey Iron Duchy was wealthier than the Sapphire Grand Duchy, and that there would be more than 1 or 2 dragon sprites. If one was used as a ransom, it wouldn't hurt the family. On the contrary, it would lighten the burden for the family. Without a dragon, the family should not occupy so many resources. Otherwise, it would cause trouble sooner or later. "Are you saying that the Grey Iron family may not pay the ransom and push the ransom of Duke Piero to the kingdom?" The King of Eagle frowned. "Yes, Your Majesty. Duke Piero is not a dragon knight. Now that the Grey Iron Dragon has been lost, the Grey Iron family will also hold Duke Piero accountable. This is an irreparable mistake." The minister replied, "Nobles would not get up early if there was no profit. Compared with the profit, family love was nothing. Moreover, Duke Piero lost the dragon and the future of his family. His son would probably hope that Duke Piero would die soon." Another minister said, "Your Majesty, if the Grey Iron family is not willing to pay the ransom, will Duke Piero just give up?" No, Your Majesty. I think Duke Piero must be redeemed no matter what. The War of Dragons started because of the kingdom. If we give up Duke Piero, all the vassal states will feel disappointed. The Kingdom of Eagle has developed for hundreds of years. We can't abandon the heart of a knight. Yes, Duke Piero must be redeemed no matter what. If the Grey Iron family is not willing to redeem the dragon, the kingdom should redeem it. This way, Duke Piero will be more loyal to the kingdom." The ministers began to discuss. Some advocated that the kingdom should not take the blame. This was a private matter of the Grey Iron Duchy. Some advocated that the kingdom should step in, otherwise, their followers would be disappointed. Of course, more ministers thought that they should send the letter to the Grey Iron Duchy first and see their reaction before making a decision. The king of Eagle's temples were throbbing. He was very upset. He was familiar with Duke Piero's son. He was a standard aristocrat who always put his interests first. Refusing to pay the ransom and pushing the blame to the Eagle Kingdom, Duke Piero could absolutely do it, and he would definitely do it. In this way, the ransom had to be paid by the kingdom. Otherwise, the royal family would lose the loyalty of more followers. Although some ministers encouraged him to put the blame on the Grey Iron Duchy, if he really did so, these ministers would be the first to betray the kingdom. After a while, he coughed lightly to stop the noisy quarrels in the hall. First, send the letter to find out the Grey Iron family's attitude. If Peter really doesn't care about Piero's life, then the kingdom will negotiate and redeem Piero. The royal family will not abandon any loyal follower. Your Majesty is merciful. Your Majesty will not abandon us. We are willing to fight for the royal family. With the knight's glory, Duke Piero will be the most loyal shield of your Majesty. We are willing to be the spear in your Majesty's hand. Seeing this, the ministers began to flatter and express their loyalty to the King of Eagle. Therefore, this official letter written by Liszt was immediately carried by the Eagle Knight to the direction of the Grey Iron Duchy. At the same time, the news that the Grey Iron Dragon was ridden by Liszt was also passed by the Eagle Knight to the border and handed over to the Dragon Knight who guarded the border. The internal affairs of the kingdom were generally managed by the king and ministers. However, when it came to diplomacy and dragon information, the Dragon Knight needed to discuss and execute it. When the meeting ended and the ministers left, the King of Eagle was still sitting on the magnificent throne. He did not get up for a long time. He just stared at the stone pillar in the hall with the Eagle royal family's emblem. His heart was filled with sadness, anger, loss, hatred, and other emotions. Alonso, you have disappointed me again and again. Fire Kingdom, if we don't suppress the rise of Liszt, the ruling structure of Eagle, Steel Ridge, and Furnace Castle in the northeast corner of the legendary continent will change dramatically. Perhaps Osborne and Helder will respond to my plan. The appearance of the Holy Dragon will arouse their desire. Osborne Platinum, King of Steel Ridge Kingdom. Helder Golden, King of Blast Furnace Kingdom. Chapter 894. I'm so angry. We still let the cannibal trees slip away. Emily fiercely waved the red blood sword, her face full of unwillingness. She had been tracking the cannibal trees for a long time, and even the construction of Xinghe Avenue had been delayed. In the end, she still failed to complete the task. Just a moment ago, she clearly found a group of cannibal trees, but because of the horse's footsteps, the cannibal trees drilled into the ground and escaped, leaving not a single tree behind. Sir Viscount, what should we do? A knight captain, who was helping Emily search for the cannibal trees, asked. Emily took a deep breath, calming her slightly anxious mood. Continue tracking. This is an urgent task assigned by His Highness. We must catch these cannibal trees no matter what. But next time we must be more gentle. Inform all the horses' hooves to be wrapped in linen. Yes, Sir Viscount. The knight captain went to arrange, while Emily squatted at the place where the cannibal trees disappeared, her eyes bright and twinkling, seemingly thinking about something. This 14-year-old girl was mentally close to adulthood. Among the serfs, many 14-year-old girls were already married, but as a viscount, Emily did not need to worry about these troubles. Her heart already belonged to someone, and she would dedicate everything to the Sir Lord. In her eyes, there was no one but His Highness the Dragon Knight soaring in the sky. Escaping underground, His Highness said that the cannibal trees were controlled by the Dragon Elf. Now it seems that the ability of the Dragon Elf is related to drilling, so can it also drill into water? She recalled the previous tracking, and found that the direction in which the cannibal trees escaped deliberately avoided the river. It seemed that the river hindered the movement of the cannibal trees, and interestingly, the river tribe originally lived in a valley near a river. After being killed by the cannibal trees, They migrated to another valley on the other side of the river, and the cannibal trees never appeared again. Then we should send orders of chivalry to surround and drive the cannibal trees away, preferably to drive them to a closed area, where a river can be dug around the periphery. Let the shovel-toothed giant elephants dig the soil. It should be very fast. The two big teeth in their jaws are much more powerful than shovels. She made up her mind. Emily immediately carried out this plan. Meanwhile, Liszt, who had escaped into the material boundary, was carefully studying Emily. This young lady follower of his had amazed him greatly. His talent was amazing, and he became a sky knight at the age of 14. Although it was due to his crazy amount of resources, without talent, he wouldn't be able to advance even if he soaked in magic potions. Looking at it now, not only was Emily talented in cultivation, but she was also very intelligent. She commanded the orders of chivalry in an orderly manner, and her thoughts were clear. The plan to capture the man-eating tree group, even if he was the one who organized it, was only SOSO. Let's go, Bard. It looks like I don't have to worry about this place anymore. Besides, there's no way to worry about it. The mana retroaction will disappear in a flash. After burrowing into the ground, you and I won't be able to find the movement of the man-eating trees even if we're blind. The crystal white orbit's vision effect was very powerful, and it could see even the smallest details of magic. However, when the magic power was covered by the soil, the crystal white trajectory became blind. After all, this was not X-ray vision. Wuxia! The invisible dragon Bard cried out. He flapped his wings, found the natural node of the reeds, and directly passed through it. On this side, Achi had already arranged all the materials needed for the magic door. She only needed Bard's cooperation to expand the natural node and form a magic door that led to the world beyond the material world. Kenley Truth and the other mages of the Guild of Magic had long been standing around excitedly, waiting to witness the great moment together. "Brother, everything is ready. We can start," Achi said solemnly. Although she still had the same peaceful expression as before, Liszt clearly saw a nervous look in her eyes. Theoretical work had been prepared for a long time, and verification experiments had been carried out, but whether the magic door could be established was still unknown. How could she remain calm? It was no longer the era of the Moon Empire when the magic net was at its peak. Civilization had been lost, and she couldn't stand on the shoulders of giants. She could only explore everything by herself. Fortunately, she had the help of the invisible dragon, and she had mastered the space elemental incarnation. Her understanding of space was unprecedented, and no one would be able to surpass her. "Can we start?" Liszt clenched his fists in excitement. The content that he had been looking forward to was about to be shown, and he couldn't calm down. "Then let's start. Bard and I are ready." "Wuxia!" Just like that. There was no grand ceremony, only a group of mages watching. Achi cast a spell to activate the huge magic formation set up on the reed marshes. This magic formation, which had consumed hundreds of thousands of gold coins and almost emptied the Fire Territory's revenue for a few months, was finally activated with an inconspicuous change. The light of magic flickered, and the magic drifting in the surrounding air whistled as it converged toward the magic formation. Kaboom! The rich magic elements directly created thunder and lightning, as well as the sudden appearance of flames and strong winds. Such changes didn't last long. Very soon, a vortex of air visible to the naked eye condensed above the lake surface of the reed marshes. The vortex continued to devour and grow, and finally extended to the surface of the reed marshes like a funnel. It stirred the surface of the lake, causing the lake water to expand in all directions, revealing a pitch-black hole. "Brother, the crack in the material space has been torn open. Now we need you and Bard to go to the world outside of the material world to stabilize the hole. According to the plan that Achi has drawn up, inject space magic between the magic net and the crack to achieve a stable dynamic balance." "Understood." Liszt touched the neck of the invisible dragon Bard. Immediately, the human and dragon rushed toward the gradually expanding pitch-black vortex. The vortex wasn't straight, but slanted downward to the bottom of the reed marshes. However, as soon as he entered the hole, he discovered that he had already reached the world outside of the material world. At this moment, in the vision of the crystal white orbit, there was a huge hole in the material boundary. He could vaguely see the magic net's magic threads extending in an attempt to repair the vortex crack. It's time for us to act. Bard, activate your magic. Dragon breath shatter. Wuxia, dragon breath. White mist sprayed around the vortex crack. The space magic was like a lubricant and repairing fluid, quickly condensing around the vortex crack. After a complicated transformation, the space magic successfully formed a buffer layer between the crack and the magic net, blocking the magic net from repairing itself. After a moment, everything was completed smoothly. The vortex crack stopped expanding, and the magic net stopped repairing itself, reaching a state of dynamic balance. Just like the entrance of the Great Maelstrom teleportation formation. Boom! List and Bard directly flew out of the hole without any obstruction. The magic formation around the reed marshes had already collapsed during the previous activation. All the magic materials lost their magic power and became complete waste. However, the magic gate formed by the vortex crack was successfully stabilized. It's a success. Achi! List laughed. We need to continue observing for a while, brother. To prevent the magic gate from collapsing, Achi needs to observe it personally. Get on the dragon. Riding on Bard, List brushed past the ground and grabbed Achi's outstretched hand, pulling Achi onto the dragon's back. With a turn, they once again rushed into the magic gate. Kenley and the other magicians were left behind, watching the magic gate that no longer needed to be driven by the magic formation. They clicked their tongues in amazement. The environment around the reed marshes was forced to change. The lake water flooded the shore and spun along with the vortex. The fish and prawns in the lake were all thrown onto the shore. The lake, which was not very big at first, appeared extremely mysterious with the help of the vortex-shaped magic gate. Miracle! What a miracle! Kenley was fascinated. She wanted to personally experience the magic gate. However, she knew that without a wormhole, mortals who entered would be directly disintegrated into tiny particles by the special space and integrated into the world outside of the physical world. Another magician exclaimed, "Coming to the Guild of Magic is the most important and successful choice of my life on the path of truth, as expected of the embodiment of truth that walks in the secular world. His Excellency Achilles has recovered the glory of an ancient magic shooter, the place where miracles happen. Great, magnificent, incredible, I don't know how to describe it. I witnessed the secrets of truth. My teacher led me into the world of magic, and here I found the home of magic. Praise His Excellency Achilles. Praise His Highness List. We have completed a magic gate." Chapter 895. The magic gate opened. The magic gate was stable. The magic gate was successful. The day of April 21st, 155 of the Sapphire calendar, was destined to be recorded in the history of the Fire Kingdom, even if the Fire Kingdom had not yet been established. I'll leave the maintenance of the reed-sweeping magic gate to you, Kenley. If the situation changes, send a message through the magic platform. When leaving the reed-sweeping magic gate, List solemnly said. Kenley Truth responded solemnly, "Don't worry, Your Highness. We will closely monitor the reed-sweeping magic gate. If there is any movement, we will report to you and His Excellency Achilles." That's good. Next, List and Achi packed the magic materials into the space ring, rode the invisible dragon Bard directly into the reed-sweeping magic gate, and quickly entered the world outside the material world. Wrapped in space magic, they were like fish in water in the world outside the material world, free and easy. They found the natural node of the Heart Island and directly crossed over. On the island, some knights and mages were directing the serfs to do basic work. He put Achi down, took out the materials from the space ring, and let Achi arrange a magic array here. List continued to ride Bard and travel through space. He still had a lot of work to do. He had to go to Black Horse Island, Oxtail City, and other places to collect magic materials. Many magic materials had been exhausted by the reed-sweeping magic gate and had to be collected again. After collecting all the magic materials, and after a cheese arrangement, it was already May when the Mind Island Magic Gate was opened. The weather was getting hotter and hotter, and everything was growing wildly. The elves of Black Horse Island were getting more and more productive, and Flame Island also ushered in good news. The potato plantation of Fire City, with the blessing of the potato sprite catcher, had a bumper harvest. The warehouse was full of potatoes, and there was no shortage of food. The banana sprite Bobby was also a native elf of Flame Island, but the banana plantation had just begun, and it would take a year or two to harvest. More and more tribes of the Moonkill people were incorporated, and the current population had reached 400,000, but the scale of the Flame people had not expanded, and there were still more than 20,000 people. In order to prevent chaos in management, Orders of Chivalry had suspended the attack on the Moonkill tribe, and everything would continue after the magic transmission array was established. Now the main task was to train, reorganize, and divide the Moonkill serfs, while building cities, roads, and developing plantations. It could be said that the Flame Island and the Flame Territory were thriving. Naturally, List was always in a good mood. Even though the territory's finances were already overburdened by the search for the materials needed to build the teleportation portal, he didn't feel troubled at all. At this moment, in the garden on the rooftop balcony of Thorn Castle, he was leisurely drinking half a slope of milk, reading a novel about a knight with the title, The Time Travel of the Holy Dragon Knight Meduha Rose, written on the cover. Ever since he became famous in the Battle of the Dragon in April, a large number of novelists suddenly had a burst of inspiration, using the Holy Dragon as material to create the latest knight novel. The plot was crudely made, and many of them were simply based on List as a blueprint, tinkering with bits and pieces. For example, these Holy Dragon Knight basically had a beautiful magic shooter by their side. In the knight novel in his hand, the protagonist didn't ride the invisible dragon, but instead rode the Twilight Dragon, which represented time, and could travel through time at will. However, the author was still limited and only described the Twilight Dragon Knight, who could cross a few days and rescue the princess who was captured by the enemy. Why not travel through the Moon Empire, through the ancient times, through the future, through endless time and space, and beat the heavens? These novelists still don't have enough imagination. They don't know how to write an infinite style. List closed the night novel and threw it aside. Whoa! Ella's voice seemed to be coming from downstairs. It was unknown which lesser sprite was scolding or which greater sprite was quarreling with. After harvesting the crops, the sprites on the Hot Spring Island began to move to Thorn Castle one after another. Ella needed to establish her power over these sprites. It had a bad temper and was like a bully. However, List doted on it, and he also felt that Ella might be able to bring about a catfish effect. The stimulation of the sprites might increase the probability of evolution. If every sprite was like the corn sprite Mickey, who stayed in the worm room all day counting corn kernels without making any progress, it would be difficult for them to evolve. It must be known that Ella was stimulated by the surrounding environment, and in just a few years, it evolved from a sprite worm to a greater sprite. Flutter. A black bat flapped its wings, flew into Thorn Castle, and landed on the balcony of the top floor. After a change, Merry Dawn Daybreak appeared. Your Highness. Mary bowed and quietly hid under the parasol. Vampires hated the sun, which would suppress their strength and make them very uncomfortable. Do you want milk? List simply asked. Mary responded with a smile. Thank you, Your Highness. If there is red wine, I hope you can have a glass. Today's sun is a bit hot. She liked her current life very much. In the Black Knight family, vampires had a strict hierarchy, and interpersonal relationships were very oppressive, making people want to escape. But the atmosphere here was particularly peaceful. The master she followed was not only great, but also not too oppressive. Especially in private, they got along very casually. The young Dragon Knight Lord did not need his followers and servants to be cautious or listen attentively. Bring a bottle of Crescent Moon wine from the cellar, List said to the servant standing behind him. Yes, master. The servant hurriedly went downstairs to fetch the red wine. List then asked, What is the reaction of the three kingdoms? Your Highness, the glory of your dragon-slaying war has not spread among the people of the three kingdoms. It is limited to a small number of greater aristocrats. According to the current situation, the Eagle Knight of the Eagle Kingdom is frequently dispatched, which should be due to the frequent interaction between the royal family and the neighboring vassal states and the Dragon Knight. Have you sent people to investigate the Grey Iron Duchy? No, we do not have enough blood servants. However, we have investigated the ministers of the Eagle Kingdom and obtained new information. The heir of the Grey Iron family, Pitford, refuses to pay a ransom to redeem Duke Piero. He blames the Eagle Kingdom for Duke Piero's captivity and wants the royal family to pay a ransom. So what is the Eagle Kingdom's plan? Eagle King Adonis Moonlight Silver has agreed to send a negotiating team from the royal family. Perhaps it will be a while before they arrive in Sapphire. What is the situation in the Purple Copper Grand Duchy? There is no unusual movement. It seems that after Prince Alex went there, he quickly calmed the emotions of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. After the funeral of the Purple Copper Grand Duke, the heir successfully inherited the title. He is still called the Purple Copper Grand Duke and has not been demoted, Mary replied. The blood servants were still small, so the information they could obtain was limited. No demotion. Liszt could not deny this. Only the Dragon Knight could establish a country. The established country was a Grand Duchy, corresponding to the Dragon Knight's title of Grand Duke. When there was no Dragon Knight in the future, the title would be demoted to Duke, and the country would be demoted from a Grand Duchy to a Duchy. However, the rules were not strictly enforced. In any case, whether it was a Grand Duchy or a Duchy, they were all independent vassal states. The tribute they paid was also fixed, and they would not pay less taxes because of the demotion. Therefore, many Grand Duchies were unwilling to change the name and demote their titles after they ascended to power. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was one of them. 3 generations of Grand Dukes after the first Dragon Knight had not been able to ride a dragon, and the Sapphire Grand Duke had only recently ridden a dragon. After reporting the news of the Eagle Kingdom, Mary continued, "The blood servants don't know much about the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom. The Sapphire family should have official channels to pass the information over, but the blood servants still heard good news in advance." Liszt raised his eyebrows. "What news?" "The Steel Ridge Kingdom has sent an envoy headed by Mashu Red White Rose to officially visit the future Fire Kingdom and pay a visit to Your Highness. This was to acknowledge the Fire Kingdom and prepare to establish diplomatic relations, which was indeed good news. However, Liszt's focus was on the other side. Mashu Red White Rose? Isn't Red White Rose the surname of the dragon-raising family of the Grand Duchy of Rose?" "Yes, Your Highness. Mashu Red White Rose is the direct heir of the Grand Duchy of Rose, but he is also the nephew of King Osborne and a member of the Steel Ridge Kingdom's Dragon Knight candidate program. He currently serves as the deputy head of the Golden Fleece Orders of Chivalry, has the title of Earl, and has a very good relationship with the Platinum family." Chapter 896. The Grand Duchy of Rose was a vassal state in the northernmost part of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The dragon-raising family, the Red and White Rose family, was famous mainly because of the roses that the family planted. Like the tulip, the rose also had a potion sequence. The Red-White Rose family had been planting roses for hundreds of years. They not only had rose dragon sprites, but also a large number of rose greater sprites, lesser sprites, and sprite worms. The varieties of roses they planted were also highly differentiated. Among them, the most famous were the red rose and the white rose. That was why the family would rather use the red rose and the white rose as their surname instead of the dragon. There was a type of magic potion in the white rose that was extremely effective. The magic potion produced from it was sold very well by the great nobles both at home and abroad. Its price was even more expensive than gold, and it was still in short supply. In order to let their children use the best magic potion, the great nobles were willing to spend unimaginable wealth. The red rose was even more peculiar. Among them, there was a species called Red Dragon Rose. The potion made from it was called Red Dragon Water. It did not increase the training of the knight significantly. However, its greatest function was to increase the magic power of dragons, which was so valuable that after the birth of the Red Dragon Rose, the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family planned to directly annex the Grand Duchy of Rose. The Grand Duchy of Rose only had one ruby dragon, which was old and not very powerful. However, the Grand Duchess of Rose at that time made a prompt decision and paid a huge price to chase after the royal princess at that time. As a result, he became the in-laws of the Platinum family. Furthermore, he promised to supply the Red Dragon water to the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. That was how the Grand Duchy of Rose was preserved. The Red and White Rose clan was still one of the dragon-raising clans. Since then, the royal family would marry a princess every few generations, or the king would marry a daughter of the Red and White Rose family. This meant that the two families were basically inseparable. The current king of Iron and Steel Ridge, Osborne Buckingham, was married to the current Grand Duchess of Rose. She gave birth to a boy and a girl, Mashu and Marilyn. Because of the close relationship between the two families, Mashu almost grew up in the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family, and because of her good talent, she was selected as a Dragon Knight candidate, waiting to ride a dragon. It was the same for Marilyn. She studied needlework at the Audis Academy, the Royal Women's Academy established by the royal family. Steel Pearl, the #1 beauty of the Northlands. Why are you telling me this? List put on a "who do you think I am" expression, and his tone turned serious. Mary, you need to understand the focus of the Blood Servants' intelligence gathering. Don't collect boring gossip. My apologies, Your Highness. Mary apologized first and then argued. But the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family appointed Count Mashu as the head of the emissary group, which itself contains self-evident political intentions. What political intentions? The Rose family and the Bai Jinbo family are almost the same. The Bai Jinbo family hopes to be on good terms with Your Highness, so they sent Countess Mashu here. This is the first layer of political intention. Countess Mashu's sister is about to enter the age of marriage. As a Steel Pearl, her marriage is destined to be an alliance. List was stunned for a moment. He was caught off guard by Mary's quick words. However, with his status and identity, his every move would carry political intentions. Even if his original intention was to live a carefree and unrestrained life, the people around him would still think hard about the meaning behind it. In particular, List was very young, but he was going to build a country in the future, and building a country required a successor. His marriage had become the focus of attention of the various forces. As for his own marriage, List was still a little confused. He knew that he must get married and have children. As a traditional China traveler, he had a deep impression of, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. If he did not leave behind descendants, he would always feel that his life was full of flaws. And this marriage partner would probably not be a chi. Sirens and humans were reproductively isolated. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. If I really succeed in contracting the fairy dragon and live forever, it probably doesn't matter if I have descendants or not. He thought a little. He said aloud, don't guess if there is any political intention. When the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom's emissary group arrives, we will naturally know their purpose. List didn't like politics that were too complicated. Yes, Your Highness. Mary followed his advice. Of course, she understood that her master seemed to be far-sighted, but in fact, his personality was still a reckless man. Steel City Suburbs, Audis College's villa accommodation area. A handsome young man was explaining something with a smile. In addition to the servants in the living room, there was a girl who was calculating the bill. The girl was wearing a light pink pleated dress, and her eyebrows were somewhat similar to the handsome man. Could be seen that the two were a pair of brother and sister. Marilyn, father and mother are very optimistic about List, and Uncle Osborne also hopes to establish a friendly relationship with the Fire Kingdom. I led the emissary group this time to see how elegant the 4-headed Dragon Knight is, and the legendary Invisible Dragon defeated 5 dragons and 3 knight by himself. It's incredible. Brother, you forgot that there is also a magic shooter. The magic shooter is only a support. In the battle of the Dragon Knight, even the incarnation of truth walking in the secular world will not play much role. The more the handsome man said, the more excited he became. List is only 2 years younger than me, and he is only 20 years old this year. How crazy the glory that happened to him is. So father, mother, and Uncle Osborne chose my future. The girl continued to calculate. Her golden wavy hair was scattered over her shoulders, and there was a trace of liveliness in her gentleness. Although this is my fate that I can't control, do you really think this thing can succeed? I think the possibility is very high. The new king ascends the throne. The Fire Kingdom needs the support of the Iron and Steel Ridge, and the Fire family also needs the mistress to bring the glory of the night. There is no princess of the right age in the three kingdoms, and no one in all the principalities is more noble than you. Marilyn, you are the most suitable. Marilyn raised her head, and there was not much expression on her snow-white and clean face. Have you all forgotten the magic shooter named Acaroids? Of course not. The handsome man was obviously Mashu Red White Rose. He waved the servants in the living room with a little pride, and then whispered, "If the secret is not known, even if father and mother appreciate List, they will not rashly propose the marriage. That would be harmful to you." Marilyn was curious and waited for the rest of the story. Mashu laid the groundwork before continuing. The magic shooter is not a human, but a remnant of the ancient race, Siren. Siren? Marilyn was surprised. She is a siren? Yes, she is a siren. Humans and sirens can't reproduce. Do you remember how the previous heir of the Duchy of Stars was abolished? It was because he loved the siren and eloped with the lower knight, which eventually angered the Duke of Stars. Not only was he demoted to a civilian, but the siren was also exiled to the land of exile. The siren was a legend for most human beings, but it was not that the royal families of the major kingdoms could not really contact the siren, but some information was limited to the great nobles. A cheese magic cloak could cover up the characteristics of the siren on her body, but it would always inadvertently expose her identity, especially the transparent fins behind her ears, and the oracle was somewhat similar to the shape of the fins. At a glance, it could be seen that she was different from human beings. It was not too difficult to expose her identity as a siren under the observation of someone who was observant. Of course, List did not have the idea of keeping a cheese identity secret. He had enough power to protect Achi. Siren. Marilyn looked down at the bill in her hand, as if telling a girl's fantasy. Maybe List and Achilles are also like the heir of the Duchy of Stars. Dragon Knight and Magic Shooter, human and siren. Brother, when you visit List, help me send a gift to them. As she spoke, Marilyn walked back to her bedroom, opened the cabinet, took out a delicate small box, and opened the lid. There was a pair of delicate earrings inside. Chapter 897. Wearing the mermaid's protection, Mashu Red White Rose quickly led the emissary delegation to the Sapphire Grand Duchy to pay a visit to her recognized brother-in-law. In his opinion, sirens could not marry humans, and List was a typical noble. Although he was only the son of an earl, he could barely be regarded as a great noble. The attitude of such nobles toward love had one thing in common, that was, it should be based on interests. Except for a very few nobles, most nobles would prioritize family interests and personal interests. This was the core of the nobles under the knight system. My sister Marilyn is the most beautiful woman in the north. She is also a steel pearl. There is no woman more suitable than her to be the queen of the Fire Kingdom in the northeast corner of the entire legendary continent. I have a four-headed dragon knight as my brother-in-law, and he is also the brother-in-law of the king. How glorious my status will be. In the final analysis, he was so eager to marry his sister mainly to strengthen the Rose-White Rose family. From many generations of ancestors, the Rose-White Rose family knew the importance of cozying up to someone powerful. Without that marriage, the Rose-White Rose family would have disappeared in the long river of history. Even if List is strong, he can't ride 4 dragons at the same time. Maybe, when Marilyn becomes the queen, I will also have the opportunity to ride a dragon. The ruby dragon in our family is too old, and the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family does not agree to let me ride other dragons. Uncle Osborne, you are using the marriage of the Rose-White Rose family. Isn't it the self-protection of the Rose-White Rose family? Mashu began to imagine that once the marriage was successful, The Rose-White Rose family would be able to benefit from both kingdoms. How glorious it would be! And the premise of all this was that List was a nobleman with interests as the core. For this reason, he led the emissary group this time, not only with a large number of gifts from the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family, but also with a large number of gifts from the Rose-White Rose family, red dragon water made by Red Rose, powerful potions made by White Rose, and rubies produced by the Ruby Dragon. No matter how talented a young man is, he will also bow down to the wealth of the Rose-White Rose family. List did not know that someone was prepared to use money to knock him unconscious. After hearing the report from Mary, the blood servant, he thought for a moment and threw the matter of the emissary group from the Iron and Steel Ridge to the back of his mind. It was quite interesting that a marriage alliance happened to him. Before coming to this world as an extremely ordinary person, when he failed to woo a girl, he had often wondered why the country didn't provide for the distribution of wives, so that an honest person wouldn't even be able to get a piece of the pie. But if he really had to marry a noble young lady whom he had never met before, he was afraid. The aristocratic lifestyle here was very open. List was very particular about the color of his hat. This was also one of the reasons why he liked Emily, Lucy, Hippolyta, and the other little girls. Young girls were always beautiful. They had not been polluted by this turbid world yet. They were like a lotus flower that had grown out of the mud but was not tainted by it. If one cared for them carefully, they would always grow into what they hoped for. Of course, he welcomed the arrival of the envoy group, and he also gladly accepted the goodwill of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. As long as the three kingdoms didn't band together, it was great news. The Fire Kingdom needed time to develop, and he himself also needed time to grow. He had ridden too many dragons in a short period of time, and the training time with each dragon was too short. So far, he hadn't left a single soul mark, and he hadn't even developed much of the dragon's combat manual. The next day, when the last magic material was ready, List decisively left the comfortable Thorn Castle and rode the invisible dragon bard to the Heart Island. At this moment, there was a whirlpool-like magic door slowly turning on the Heart Island, and a pitch-black passage led directly to the inside of the island. There was no water, and this magic door was completely built on land. "Brother, you're back." Achi was standing at the edge of the Heart Island, practicing mastering the Earth Elemental Incarnation. If it wasn't for the delay of the Space Elemental Incarnation, she would have practiced the Earth Elemental Incarnation as planned after mastering the Water Elemental Incarnation and Ice Elemental Incarnation. This was a practice for large-scale manufacturing projects. Ordinary archmages could only use magic to slightly change the terrain, but once a magic shooter mastered the Earth Elemental Incarnation, they could change the terrain as they pleased. Legends said that ancient magic shooters had the power to move mountains and fill seas. Perhaps the description was exaggerated, but the power of magic shooters was evident. "Yes, I'm back." List walked over and stroked Achi's beautiful azure hair, while Achi meekly tilted her head, enjoying the stroking. There was already an indescribable tacit understanding and intimacy between the two. "Then, brother, let's start connecting the two magic doors and expand the wormhole space," Achi said excitedly after enjoying the stroking. "Okay." The two of them rode the invisible dragon bard and went straight to the magic door. After entering the world outside of the material world, Achi took out the magic materials, made the required magic array, and continuously guided Bard to activate the magic array. Then, with the help of its innate ability, she rushed back and forth between the two magic doors. This was a set of complicated magic behaviors, and it probably used the attraction between magic powers to guide the magic doors. Finally, the beacons of the two magic doors were connected, and then, through Bard's spatial magic power, it slowly expanded the magic connection, opening up the wormhole space. The principle was very complicated. List didn't know much about it, but he only needed to follow Achi's instructions. After 3 days of intermittent work, a man, a dragon, and a siren were exhausted, and the wormhole between the two magic doors was finally expanded. After carefully reinforcing it, the magic teleportation array was officially completed. The two-way repulsion of the channel is normal, and the speed of rushing out of the magic door has been attenuated, and it is now equal to the speed of entering the magic door, Brother, the Heart Island Reed magic teleportation array is announced to be completed. After repeatedly passing through the 2 magic doors, Achi smiled sweetly. Her heart was full of a sense of accomplishment. This was the first glory of the ancient magic shooters that she had copied. Standing in front of the Heart Island magic door, List was also excited. This great miracle that only existed in some legends was tossed around by himself, and his sense of accomplishment was no less than Achi's. He took a deep breath. He quickly made a decision. Since this magic teleportation array has been completed, and the territory does not have the financial and material resources to build the Black Horse Island Jade Mountain Magic Teleportation Array for the time being, then this magic array will be used as a regular transportation throw to transport resources and start building the Flame Islands. After the completion of the magic teleportation array, List quickly notified the Oxtail Marquis to let the Tulip family prepare materials and participate in the construction of the Heart Island. To protect the magic teleportation array, it was best to build the Heart Island into a castle fortress. Chapter 898. The teleportation array has been completed? That fast? Oxtail Marquis exclaimed. List calmly sipped his tea. Father, don't you know how efficient I am? It's just a magic teleportation array. Achi and I can easily complete it. Father, you can arrange for the family's knight and serfs to go to Tulip Island through the Heart Reed transmission array. That's good. With the Heart Reed teleportation formation, I don't have to continue plowing in Oxtail Hill. Next, I plan to keep a part of the knight to maintain trade, and move the rest of the knight and serfs to Tulip Island. What do you think? I think it's feasible. The Iron Hoof Island will be returned to the Sapphire clan sooner or later, so there's no need to run it. Black Horse Island and Coral Island are the concessions of the Fire Kingdom in the future. There is no need for Father to continue to stay. It is more important to develop Tulip Island. If domestic development is not done, the trade focus will always be in the direction of Sapphire. If the trade focus remained on Sapphire, it would only continue to enrich the Sapphire family. This was not what List hoped for. He hoped that the bustle of the Shell Sea would rapidly surpass that of the Jade Wave Sea, and the Blaze family would rapidly surpass the Sapphire family. After all, the Sapphire family was just his follower. The big brother must be richer than the little brother. Which country is next to the Fire Islands? Oxtail Marquis suddenly asked. It's the border between the Yellowstone Plains Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom. However, the terrain is complicated and uninhabited. Still a wasteland. A few hundred kilometers inland was the Fengshui Mountain Principality, a very weak small country. I'm asking Yevich to investigate. We'll make further plans after we gather enough information. In fact, he had an idea. He might as well occupy a large piece of land on the legendary continent and build a kingdom that spanned across the continent and the ocean. It just so happened that the border between the two countries was barren and uninhabited, and there was a large piece of land that could be occupied. As for war, he was not afraid. It just so happened that he needed an excuse to plunder the knight's resources. In his eyes, the knight was a kind of resource. Once the Fire Kingdom absorbed the Moon Killers, the serf population would no longer be lacking. However, what could they do if they didn't have a knight? Children were encouraged to have children for at least 1 or 2 generations before they could become talents, so robbing them was the most reasonable and fastest way. As for the loyalty of the knight class, it didn't matter to him if he had milk or mother. Oxtail Marquis did not know what List was thinking. He was worried, and he said, "Is the coast all barren land? That will be difficult to do business with." "It's fine. Let's develop the country first. I'll settle the trade issues later." "All right." After the father and son chatted for a while, a servant came to report that Madame Penelope had arrived, so List went to accompany the old lady. At noon, he enjoyed a new play in the indoor theater built in Tulip Castle. After watching the play, after chatting for a while, they left Tulip Castle. When he returned to Black Horse Island, a large number of orders of chivalry and serfs had gathered on the island, ready to board the ship and set off for Heart Island. They crossed the Heart Reed teleportation formation and arrived at Flame Island to assist in the development of Flame Island. The workshop industry and the plantation industry would be gradually transferred over the next year. Although this was a concession, List was not at ease to leave his family here. It was safer to move to Flame Island. Captain Marcus, Captain Paris, Captain Charles, I'll leave the orders of chivalry and the serfs to you. Be careful when crossing the Heart Reed teleportation formation. Once the teleportation formation changes, terminate the teleportation immediately. Please rest assured, Your Highness. Well, go ahead. After explaining, List did not stay any longer. He directly drove the invisible dragon bard into the world outside the material world, then found the exit of the Great Maelstrom teleportation formation and quickly crossed to Flame Island. He went straight to the location of the giant elephant orders of chivalry. The reward of the smoke mission seemed to have been discovered by Emily. Mission completed. Reward: Dragon Pit Mine. The new smoke mission was also released as soon as the Heart Reed teleportation formation was completed. Mission: the Eagle Kingdom's negotiation team, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom's envoys, and the Blast Furnace Castle's envoys will arrive one after another. The order in the northeast corner of the legendary continent needs to be re-established, and the Master of the Sea also needs to show his authority. Please force the 3 kingdoms to recognize the Fire Kingdom. Reward: Firebird in the Skeleton. The reward of the new mission seemed to be related to the Dragon Pit Mine. It's here, Captain. The knight climbed out of the big pit and reported to Emily. Prepare to send people to surround the big pit. The giant elephant orders of chivalry immediately dig the river channel and fill the ditch with water. This time, we must not let the man-eating trees escape. Emily ordered coldly. In front of her was a valley. In the distance ahead, a mountain range separated into 2 branches, forming a rather large valley. The valley was verdant and lush. However, hidden in the vegetation, there were big pits one after another. The smallest pit had a diameter of more than 800 meters, and the largest even reached a diameter of 10 kilometers. The man-eating trees kept escaping, but they were blocked by the giant elephant orders of chivalry in this valley full of big pits. In the end, they were blocked in a big pit with a diameter of 1.5 kilometers. The giant elephant orders of chivalry dug a ditch around the big pit. Once the ditch was filled with water, the man-eating trees could be completely blocked in it, and it would be like catching a turtle in a jar. Rumble. Splash. A river in the valley quickly flowed into the ditch, and in a short while, the ditch was filled with water. Looking at the overflowing river in the ditch, Emily clenched the red-blood sword in her hand and suddenly said, "Orders of chivalry, follow me inside to search." The circular pit with a diameter of 1.5 kilometers had an area of about 7 square kilometers, or more than 10,000 acres, which was equivalent to the area of several small villages added together. Orders of chivalry searched in a fan shape, and soon found traces of the man-eating trees. The man-eating trees that had no time to burrow into the ground stood upright in the woods. However, although many man-eating trees were found, there was still no trace of the dragon sprite. Emily could judge that the dragon sprite was here. Not coming out? In that case, we'll take the stupid way and cut down the woods in the big pit. She made a very decisive decision. List had instructed that the dragon sprite should not be hurt, so they chose to cut down the trees. Otherwise, they would burn them all with a fire. The serfs following orders of chivalry were quickly dispatched and began to cut down from the edge to the center of the pit, leaving only sparse man-eating trees. The cut-down trees were transported out, and the big pit was bustling with activity. The knight shuttled back and forth, looking for any traces of the man-eating tree dragon sprite that might be exposed. Emily was also patrolling. When List rushed over riding the invisible dragon bard, he saw a busy scene. After he appeared, Emily immediately rushed over. "Your Highness, this is the valley full of big pits?" "Yes, we have blocked the man-eating trees in this big pit, but we can't find any traces of the dragon sprite. I plan to cut down the trees first, and if the dragon sprite is still not exposed, then we will start digging," Emily said seriously. Hearing her say this, List suddenly had an idea. "Emily's loyalty to me is unquestionable, so should I teach her the Chi's secret technique Magic Eye?" Speaking of which, although the magic eye was a rare and precious chi secret technique, it was not like there were no others in the outside world who had it. After all, Liszt had found it in the book cover, and the original owner seemed to be a Sky Knight of the Blast Furnace Kingdom, Stephanie Vulture. Let's talk about it later. He still had not made up his mind. He was going to send someone to investigate the Vulture family in the future. If the Vulture family still existed, and the magic eye chi secret technique had not spread, he would plunder the Vulture family and let the Flame family own the magic eye. Chapter 899. This chapter is Ascending the Azure Court. Emily was still cutting down trees. Liszt walked around the pit and didn't find the light of mana retroaction. He didn't know how well the man-eating tree dragon spirit could hide. They had been playing hide-and-seek for more than a month and hadn't shown up once. While cutting down trees, he let a group of serfs move to another pit, and then chose the central position to start digging. He felt that these pits were the Dragon Pit Giant or rewarded by the Smoke Mission. The serfs dug hard, but they only dug 2 meters deep before they reached the rock layer. The stone was broken and sent to Liszt. The stone was heavy and dark red in color. What kind of stone is this? Do any of you know it? Liszt shook it and felt that the stone was some kind of ore. Especially with the Smoke Mission's prompt, he felt that the stone in his hand was more like an ore. Vernal Inc., who was next to Liszt, replied, "Your Royal Highness, if I'm not mistaken, this is iron ore." Iron ore? Liszt took a closer look. It was a little different from the iron ore he had looted from the Dragon Mountain iron mine. The main difference was the color. What kind of iron ore is this? Why is it different from the iron ore I have seen? I remember that the iron ore of Dragon Mountain is very black. It may be a poor mine. Iron ore with low iron content generally appears in the upper position of the ore bed. Vernal sounded excited. Your Royal Highness, there may be iron ore under this pit. If this was really iron ore, then there was no doubt that this was the Dragon Pit Giant or a super huge iron ore mine. Looking at the densely packed pits throughout the valley, Liszt's eyes turned red. Hurry up and send people to dig every pit. Dig 3 feet into the ground to find the ore underneath. I want to know how big this iron mine is. Yes, Your Royal Highness. Vernal was full of action. Iron ore was too important to the country. The knight's equipment and daily utensils were inseparable from iron ore. Not only did the serfs dig hard, but many knights also dug hard with shovels, hoes, and pickaxes. There were a few other pits around the one with iron ores. Very quickly, iron ores of different colors and qualities were dug out. There was a large pit that only dug half a meter deep and dug out a pitch-black iron ore. This was a high-quality iron ore with an iron content of 90%. It could be directly cast into utensils with a few strikes. It seems to be a really large iron mine. Not bad. Liszt was in a good mood. With such an iron mine and the gray iron dragon, the Fire Kingdom would no longer be short of iron. However, as the pit was dug further, soon different ores were sent over. Your Highness, these ores don't look like iron ore, but more like copper ore. An old knight like him was involved in the daily affairs of the territory all year round. He was involved in ore refining, so he knew many kinds of ores. It's probably bronze ore. Those iron ores before are probably Blackheart iron ores. He then made a guess. It's very likely that a long time ago, a black-hearted iron dragon fought with a bronze dragon here, forming this huge mine. His guess was very logical. However, soon, a knight brought a new stone. This was a stone that looked like a combination of many square stones. After seeing the stone, Vernal exclaimed, "This is galena!" Galena? The ore produced by the lead dragon. There is a lead dragon in the Eagle Kingdom. I once bought a batch of galena ore to refine lead metal. Soon after, a few more pits sent over galena. In other words, in this valley, there were not only black iron ores, bronze ores, but also galena ores. According to Vernal's logic, the ancient times might have been a triangular battle between the bronze dragons, the black-hearted iron dragons, and the lead dragons. However, the excited Liszt and the others still underestimated the richness of the dragon pit. When night fell, another night delivered a new ore. It was a scarlet red ore that was easily crushed into a sand-like shape. Vernal did not recognize it, nor did List, but it was certain that it should be a new kind of metal ore. The Guild of Magic had been informed to send mages who had studied metal ores, so they would know what kind of metal ore it was. Your Highness, it's incredible. There are actually 4 kinds of metal ores buried in this valley. Vernal could not suppress his excitement. Under the light of the bonfire, his face was red as if he had been hit in the head by a gold ingot. List, on the other hand, was much calmer. He had long known of the existence of the dragon pit, but the number of types was a little unexpected. Don't be impatient, Vernal. We have already explored the distribution of the large pits in the valley, and there is a large pit on the periphery of the valley that has not yet been excavated. There may be new ores there. There are new ores? Doesn't that mean there are 5 kinds of ores? Vernal was even more excited. It was different from Vernal's excitement for the ores themselves. List, on the other hand, was thinking about another question. Assuming that the 5 dragons fought here, could some of them have died here and then been buried deep underground? The reward of the New Smoke mission is the menace of the dragon in the skeleton. Does this mean that there is a dragon underground waiting to be reborn? Just like Leo, a dragon would give birth to a fire seed after its death, waiting for the opportunity to be reborn again. It was unlikely for the metal dragons and gem dragons. They did not have the possibility of elementalization, and the dragon's supreme magic could not exist for a long time. Only the elemental dragon's supreme magic could exist forever. He did not mention it to Vernal. He was just guessing, perhaps, there are more than 4 or 5 metal dragons fighting here. There are also elemental dragons involved. I just don't know if there are gem dragons involved. The dragon pit mine would be developed sooner or later, and he would soon know whether there were elemental dragons sleeping here. And tonight he still had work to do. As the serfs continued to cut down trees, all the trees in the big pit above the Blackheart iron mine were cut down within a day and night, leaving only a few hundred cannibal trees scattered in the northwest corner of the big pit. Your Highness, can we start digging now? Emily asked. Then let's start. The serfs who had changed shifts and rested began to dig along the open space between the cannibal trees. According to the distribution of the Blackheart iron mine, the soil layer was less than 2 meters deep. As long as the soil here was turned over and the cannibal trees were transplanted to other places one by one, he did not believe that he could not find the cannibal tree dragon elves. Soon, the moon set and the sun rose. The darkness before dawn was pierced by the sun, and the cannibal trees were dug away one by one. When the last few dozen trees were about to be finished, the cannibal trees suddenly began to tremble. Then the branches became soft, and the whole tree bent to the ground, ready to escape. Emily, who had not slept all night, saw this and shouted to the knight behind her, "Wake up, His Highness!" She then rushed to the last few dozen cannibal trees. Chapter 900. This chapter is 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. Your Royal Highness, List, who was napping in the tent, had already woken up when Emily shouted. He was not a deep sleeper, so when the knight came to call, he lifted the curtain of the tent and walked out. Instead of riding a dragon, he flew directly into the sky and turned into a meteor. He landed among the remaining cannibal trees. With the eye of magic, he could see that the cannibal trees, which had no light of magic retroaction, were all flashing with a pale yellow magic light. These cannibal trees were originally burrowing into the ground, but Emily detected them and directly used her Thunder Attribute Battle Aura to bombard the ground, interfering with their movements, so they could not burrow down for a long time. However, Emily and the others did not dare to harm these cannibal trees at will, for fear of hurting the dragon elf. That was why the situation was in a stalemate. When List arrived, he saw the cannibal trees desperately trying to burrow into the ground, but to no avail. He moved a few steps and rushed to the side of a cannibal tree lying on the ground. He reached out and grabbed the soft trunk of the cannibal tree, then released the firebird and quickly deterred all the cannibal trees. The pale yellow magic receded, and these cannibal trees quickly returned to their original state of growth. I caught you, little fellow. Stop struggling and show yourself. The corner of List's mouth curled into a smile. The inconspicuous man-eating tree in his hand was hiding a strong magical radiance. Obviously, it was the hiding place of the man-eating tree dragon. Patter. As if knowing that it could not escape, a large crystal-clear elf jumped out of the cannibal tree. It had a human form, but its body was translucent. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether it was more like a boy or a girl. In short, it had no gender characteristics. The color of its body was pale yellow, about 1 meter tall, and its figure was slightly slender. A pair of transparent wings flapped, allowing its feet to float above the ground. Its face had delicate features and big, dark eyes. There was also a leaf on top of its head, and below the leaf were several fibrous roots. Girabiliwidacia. The man-eating tree dragon elf trembled slightly in the face of List, who was overflowing with dragon might, but it still bravely shouted at List. This was a language he had never heard of before. It was somewhat similar to the language of the moon, but not quite because there was no pattern to it. It was probably a meaningless shout. Stop shouting, I don't understand. Come, let's contract it and then we can communicate normally. List reached out his hand, gesturing for the man-eating tree dragon elf to quickly contract it and not waste time. Wah! The dragon spirits that were gradually taking on the shape of humans weren't as cute as the lesser elves and greater elves, but they were more beautiful than them. However, this slightly ferocious man-eating tree dragon elf did not seem to be easy to deal with. Even under the shroud of dragon might, it still dared to talk back. So, do you want jade powder? We have all kinds of flavors. List took out a big bag of jade powder and held it in his hand. The man-eating tree dragon elf's eyes instantly lit up, but then it glared at List. Bailop de Wallahai. After the contract, these are all yours. Little fellow, don't worry. You will definitely not be harmed by following me. The moon killer cannot harm you, and neither can the flame man. Because I am the master of this place. Everything on this land belongs to me. Desvidania, your unwillingness to cooperate is putting me in a difficult position. You must know that I have even come up with a name for you. How about Twisted Dryad, Maokai? You don't like it? How about Earth-escaping beast, Rexel? You don't like it either? Do you want to be called Jade Deity Ian? From your expression, you don't like it? List said 3 names in a row, and then said the 4th. How about I call you Spear of Vengeance, Krista, or Carly for short? I won't allow you to refuse anymore, so I'll call you Carly. Carly, my patience is running out. Looks like I have to do it myself. Seeing that the man-eating tree dragon elf Carly was not cooperating, he could only step forward and reach out to grab her. Under the powerful strength of the dragon knight, Carly couldn't struggle at all. Even if she wanted to release her innate magic, it was dispersed by List's surging dragon's aura. She couldn't even circulate her magic power. At the side, Emily looked at List quietly. She was very envious of the dragon knight's power. Although she had been promised by List that she would be able to interact with the light emerald gemstone dragon Ethan when the time was right, she was currently only a normal Sky Knight. She was still far from becoming a perfected Sky Knight. Of course, this was because she did not know what List was planning. List did not care when Emily would be perfected. He only needed to leave a spiritual brand in Ethan's mind before letting Emily ride the dragon. Given his relationship with Emily, the spiritual brand shouldn't make things too difficult for Emily. This would greatly reduce the difficulty of Emily riding the dragon. While she was slightly distracted, List had already grabbed Carly and forced his finger into Carly's mouth. After propping up Carly's chin a little, Carly's teeth bit his finger. When the blood and teeth came into contact, a strange feeling lingered between him and Carly. This was the familiar power of the contract between the elves. But compared to the contracts between sprite worms, lesser sprites, and greater sprites, the power of the contract between the dragon elves seemed to be much weaker and less obvious. You rocky brusta, the dragon elf continued to shout. At this time, List had already understood its emotions. It was scolding List for being too rough, and angrily denouncing that humans were bad people and needed to be killed. The power of the contract can no longer distort a very murderous dragon elf's view of the world. At most, it can reduce its perception of me from hatred to unfamiliarity. Greater sprites and lesser sprites are better. After the contract, they will directly become closest to me. Taming the dragon elf is a bit troublesome. Over the next period of time, Liszt appeased Carly. It was nothing more than the emotional exchange of the previous words, and then taking out a large bag of jade powder to tempt Carly, and finally eliminating Carly's unfamiliar attitude towards him. In addition, the power of the contract was faintly changing. Finally, when it was almost noon, Carly finally recognized Liszt. She shouted Liszt's name. "Liszt? Very good, Carly. Then from now on, bring your cordyceps and these man-eating trees to live in the plantation I've opened up." He had many questions about the dragon elf that he wanted to understand, but now was not the time to study it. Carly was still very vigilant. It had indeed been injured by the moon killers. According to the emotional exchange, its worm stalks had almost been cut off by the moon killers. From then on, it began to retaliate against the moon killers. It slaughtered thousands of moon killers, caught them and buried them in the roots of the man-eating trees, and then absorbed the nutrients from them. The man-eating trees, beyond Liszt's expectation, actually had the ability to eat corpses. They could emit a smell that attracted dying animals. When the animals fell under the tree, the roots, trunk, or even leaves would grow fibrous roots and plunge into the animal's body to absorb nutrients. A very interesting plant. Once Carly's guard is down, I'll carefully study the dragon sprites and the man-eating trees. Liszt thought to himself as he watched Carly quietly sitting in the tent eating jade powder. No matter what kind of elf it was, the greatest value was still the crops they cultivated. After eating a simple field lunch with 10 dishes, he took a short rest. In the afternoon, he began to summon the magicians who had come to identify the ores. They identified the 4 ores that had been found, and the 5th ore that was found this morning. "Your Highness, according to my identification, these 5 ores are blackheart iron ore, bronze ore, galena ore, mercury ore with the outer layer of mercury, and titanium ore." Mercury ore and titanium ore? Liszt was really surprised this time. The magic metals that are not magic metals, mercury and titanium. Mercury was the only liquid metal at room temperature. It was a very valuable magic material. Many magic circles and magic equipment needed mercury. Titanium was also very valuable and was also known as small mithril, because it had similar properties as mithril, lightweight and hard material. If titanium was mixed into armor, the quality of ordinary iron armor could be directly increased by 2 to 3 levels. Mercury dragon and titanium dragon were not found in the 3 kingdoms and vassal countries. A small amount of mercury and titanium were transported from other kingdoms in the legendary continent. He didn't expect to find mercury and titanium mines on Blazing Island. Chapter 901. I want to build a city here called Dragon Valley City. Then build a road from Inferno City called Wuxia Avenue. Then build a road from Dragon Valley City to Estuary City called Wuxia Avenue. Inferno City also wants to build a road to the reed marshes called Wuxia Avenue, and build a city in the reed marshes called Reed City. Liszt casually sketched on a map. Inferno Island was square in shape, but at an angle. The sacred mountain where the Moonslayer holy tribe was located was roughly at the center of the island. From here, one could divide the island into 2 halves, northwest and southeast. Currently, the Flame Men's activities were mostly concentrated in the southeast. The geographical center of the southeast was roughly the Maelstrom Mountain, so Inferno City at the foot of the Maelstrom Mountain could become the transportation hub and central city of the southeast. Wuxia Avenue extended east from Inferno City, crossing 2 tributaries of the Maelstrom River and extending to Reed City near the Reed Marshes. Reed City, which guarded the Heart-Reed Transportation Formation, would inevitably become a trading city. Further east from Reed City was the East Coast, where a suitable port could be found to build a port city. Wuxia Avenue extended west from Inferno City to Jade Mountain, a branch of the Flame Mountain Range, and connected to Jade Stone City that was being built here. In the future, a road could be built from Jade Stone City to the west and north, reaching the sacred mountain. List intended to build a city at the center of the island. Longxue Avenue extended southwest from Inferno City to the Dragon Pit Mine, and Dragon Valley City would be the future mining center. Longxue Avenue extended south from Dragon Valley City to Estuary City at the mouth of the Maelstrom River. This city would be the only port city of Inferno Island at this stage, responsible for communication with Tulip Island. Basically, these 4 avenues were the current development vein of Inferno Island, and all agricultural and industrial production would be carried out around these 4 avenues. The Heart-Reed Transportation Formation had been activated, and a steady stream of knight and serfs were rushing to Inferno Island. When they arrived in large numbers, Inferno Island would be crazily developed. Longxue Avenue needs to be built as soon as possible. Emily, immediately lead the giant elephant orders of chivalry to build Longxue Avenue, and then Longxue Avenue. Understood, Your Highness. After assigning the tasks of repairing the roads and building the city, List habitually left the work to others. He rode on the invisible dragon bard and circled above the Dragon Pit Mine a few times. The size of this mine located in the valley was beyond imagination. It was about 20,000 square kilometers. Figuratively speaking, List's hometown, Coral Island, had an area of more than 10,000 square kilometers, equivalent to the area of an ordinary prefecture-level city. The Dragon Pit Mine was about the size of 2 Coral Islands or 2 prefecture-level cities, and it was distributed with 5 types of ores. Of course, on average, the mining area of each ore didn't seem too big. At present, it was confirmed that the Galena mine was located in the depths of the valley and had a relatively small area. The Mercury mine was located on the right side of the valley and also had a very small area. The Black Iron mine was located on the left side of the valley and had the largest area. The Bronze mine was located in the middle of the valley and also had a sizable area. The Titanium mine was located at the entrance of the valley, and its size was still uncertain. The exploration mages of the Association of Mages were exploring together with the knight, striving to determine the exact distribution of the mining area and formulate a mining plan. As for the reserves of the mining area, it was very difficult to calculate. However, these ores were all shallow ores, and the difficulty of mining them was relatively low. Unlike Earth, where many minerals were distributed deep underground, the metal and gem mines of this world originated from dragons, and their buried locations were very shallow. Perhaps there were also deep mines. After all, no one had the means to explore and mine them. Once this mining area is mined, it will be enough to support the Fire Kingdom's resource consumption for decades. Coupled with the Jade Mine of Jade Mountain, there is no need to worry about resources. Flame Island deserves the praise of having a vast territory and abundant resources. List was overjoyed. However, is there really an elemental dragon skeleton buried at the bottom of the Dragon Pit Mine? This was a question worth exploring. Mining was not an easy task. It would take a very long time to completely excavate this valley. Unfortunately, even if my magic eye is combined with the dragon, I still can't see the magic underground. The magic eye was already dazzling enough, but he still felt that it wasn't good enough. Heart Island. The knight was supervising the serf's construction project. The chief architect was Mbape Gravel, the teacher of List's chief architect, Jemiah Rammed Earth. Jemiah was almost executed for sleeping with Mbape's daughter-in-law, but was eventually bailed out by List. Mbape had been working as an architect for the Tulip family. The Heart Island was in urgent need of development, so List hired him to preside over the construction of the island castle. Perhaps he was resentful of List for sheltering Jemiah, but Mbape did not dare to show any of it. He still worked conscientiously. Moreover, there was the Knight of Black Horse Island supervising, so no one dared to cut corners. The watering is not qualified. We must use enough cement here, he commanded in a loud voice. The construction craftsman immediately pushed a wheelbarrow of cement and poured it into the shallows of the Heart Island at low tide. High-quality cement made of volcanic rock had become another major infrastructure tool in List's hands. After solidification, the cement was harder than rock. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, a horn sounded. A fleet of ships with red tulip flags slowly approached the hastily built dock of the Heart Island. There was also a huge pitch-black bird circling above the fleet. The big bird landed directly on the construction site of Mbape and others. Then, a knight wearing silver armor jumped off the bird's back. The supervising knight immediately approached and saluted, "Sir Marquis, go and do your work. I just came to take a look." It was none other than List's father, the Black Albatross Knight, Marquis Lee William. "My lord." Mbape also hurried to salute. Lee William smiled. "Mbape, it's hard working on the island. It's an honor for me to serve His Royal Highness the Dragon Knight." "It's not hard at all." Mbape responded hurriedly. He was a famous master architect, but in the eyes of the nobles, there was not much difference between him and the commoners. The gap in class status was far from being made up for by superb skills. "Well, work hard." Lee William raised his hand in satisfaction. The Heart Island was not his territory, but it was his son's territory, so he had the spirit of being the owner. "Build the Heart Fortress well and protect the island and the door behind it. Don't let anything slip through your fingers. Please rest assured, my lord, the quality of Mbape's construction has always been the best." "I believe that." Seeing that Lee William was about to go to other places to inspect, Mbape hesitated for a while and suddenly said, "My lord, there is one thing I don't know if I should ask you or not." Lee William slightly frowned. "What is it?" He did not like his followers and subjects making requests of him. Mbape quickly said, "My grandson Steve Gravel is studying in the Knight College. He is only 17 years old and is already an Earth Knight. I heard that His Royal Highness the Dragon Knight is recruiting a new group of Retainer Knight. I wonder if you can recommend Steve to His Royal Highness." Mbape bowed deeply to Lee William. Lee William did not want to agree at first, but considering that Mbape had worked for the Tulip family for many years, he reluctantly agreed. "As long as the Soul Castle is built perfectly, I guarantee that your grandson can become a Retainer Knight of List." Retainer Knight. Chapter 902. The fleet of the Tulip family, the fleet of Black Horse Island, and the fleet of Iron Hoof Island arrived. One after another, a large number of fleets transported knight and civilians to the Heart Island. Paris stood in front of the dark and deep magic gate, feeling an unimaginable shock. Although she was not interested in history, novels, and the like, she also knew that the magic transmission array belonged to the legendary and powerful magic creation, but it really appeared in front of her. Usually, when she was in contact with the Guild of Magic, those mages had to struggle for a long time to release a small fireball. Even if it was a great mage, the impact of casting spells was very slight, not as powerful as her own flying and flashing moves. Even the magic shooter Chi did not feel too amazing. After all, she rarely saw Chi fight. However, at this moment, facing the magic gate, she deeply felt the incredible power of magic. She heard from Chris Truth that in this era, the magic network had shrunk and magic had withered. If the level of the magic network in the era of the Moon Empire was restored, it would truly reflect the incredible power of magic creation. "Captain Paris, what are you thinking about?" Speaking of the devil, the vice president of the Guild of Magic, Chris, came to the magic gate from the Association of Magic Camp. "I'm thinking about the horror of magic. Magic is the most direct embodiment of truth, and truth is the deepest mystery of the world, unfathomable. But as a mage, exploring the truth and taming magic is our lifelong pursuit. Although you are not a mage, you should also pursue the truth." "Oh, reading those magic books and research notes, that's not my hobby." When it came to books, Paris had a headache. So no longer delayed, she directly called the knight of the patrol group to escort the serfs in line, carrying goods or pushing wheelbarrows to the magic gate. The knight, who had long been notified, was constantly rushing among the serfs. "When you go in, your body will be out of control, but don't be nervous. Hold the goods in your hands, hold the handlebars, and you can walk out in the blink of an eye. The first time you pass through the transmission array, you may experience dizziness, but you can recover after a short rest." Even so, there were still many serfs standing in front of the magic gate, cowering and not daring to move forward. At this time, The whip in the knight's hand would mercilessly strike the ground and whip the serf. If the serf still didn't move forward, the next whip would hit the serf. Hitting people was an inhumane act, but sometimes, if one didn't do it, it would be impossible to drive a serf who had never seen the world. Don't be afraid. The teleportation magic circle doesn't eat people. Paris joined the promotion with a new magic creation, the loudspeaker. Once you walk through this door, you will have the status of a free citizen. Sir Overlord will give you land that belongs to you. The fruits of the harvest after farming will all belong to you. You only need to pay 1/20th of the tax to obtain the protection of the knight. In order to avoid being whipped, in order to gain the status of a freeman and the land, even the most timid serf had to bite the bullet and rush into the magic gate. When the serfs entered the magic gate one after another, the subsequent serfs, driven by inertia, stepped into the magic gate one after another, and there was no more commotion. Very soon, the serfs all entered the heart read transmission array, and everything went smoothly. The knight also entered one after another. Paris was ready to step in at the last moment. To be honest, she was actually a little scared. So she quietly came to the work camp of the Association of Mages and watched Chris and the others busily collecting information about the magic gate. This was the task assigned by Achi. The heart read transmission array was only an experimental product. More information needed to be collected to perfect the magic transmission array, this great magic creation. Is there any news from the reed marshes? Paris asked. Chris nodded. Everyone safely crossed the heart read transmission array. Except for some serfs with poor health who vomited and dizziness, there were no other problems. How long will the Association of Mages work here? It will take a long time. The collection of information about the magic gate is very complicated, but we only need to send a group of mages here. I also plan to go to Flame Island today. His Highness has sent a message that there are more and more ancient mages killing the moon people. He needs me to go to the Association of Mages to help manage. Well, that's good. I'll go first. See you on Flame Island. See you on Flame Island. Deep breath. Crossing the magic gate. Suddenly, a feeling of weightlessness lingered around Paris. She opened her eyes, but she couldn't see anything around her. Only occasional flashes of light. The feeling of claustrophobia made her quite uncomfortable, but fortunately, this feeling only lasted for a short moment. Then, as if her body was thrown out, she regained her sight. Regaining the power to control her body, she quickly twisted her waist, as if jumping from a high place, and landed steadily on the wooden planks that covered half of the lake. Patter. The wooden planks shook a little when her boots landed. The sky was blue, the sun was hot and unrestrained, and the surroundings were bustling with serfs who had just arrived and were reorganizing their ranks. A faint magic door stood on the surface of the lake behind her. Around the lake were simple wooden houses arranged like a building block game. Further away, there was a dense and endless forest, and the mountain ranges stretched towards the horizon. Captain Paris, welcome to Flame Island's reed marshes. A Viscount Sky Knight, who was in charge of reception, was leading a squad of knight to patrol the entire reed marshes. His Highness has ordered that the knight of the patrol squad will be stationed in the reed marshes, responsible for maintaining the security of the reed marshes and building Reed City. Paris held back her curiosity and replied, Do I need to go to Fire City to visit His Highness? No need. His Highness will come to the reed marshes at night for a gathering of his followers, and then you can listen to His Highness's instructions. If Captain Paris isn't tired, you can immediately take over the security here. I still need to patrol the camp of Oxtail Dominion, and I'm really too busy. Then leave it to me. Paris immediately went into work mode. She gathered the knight of the patrol squad, and then began to patrol the camp of Flame Lord in the reed marshes, arranging the serfs' living quarters according to their ranks, and establishing a strict order of entry and exit. After a while, the order in the camp of Flame Lord quickly stabilized. The camp of Oxtail Dominion next door also quickly quieted down. Before they knew it, night had fallen. With a majestic and inviolable dragon roar, List, who was riding the invisible dragon Bard, descended from the sky. He signaled Bard to find a Chi and see if she needed help. Surrounded by the night, he arrived at the camp of Flame Lord to inspect the first batch of immigrants who had passed through the teleportation array. He also sent a knight to the camp of Oxtail Dominion, inviting the Marquis of Oxtail and the others to a gathering. Half an hour later, a barbecue gathering began around a roaring bonfire. All the nobles of Oxtail Dominion and Flame Lord gathered here and barbecued meat by themselves. Only List, Lee William, Paris, Chris, and other viscounts and great sorcerers were gathered at a table, and the servants were responsible for barbecuing and serving dishes. "Father, how do you feel coming to Flame Island?" List asked with a smile, raising a glass of beer. Chapter 903. This chapter is brightly lit Life-I and will be updated. List only needed to take charge of a general direction for the construction of Flame Island, such as building roads, hygiene, and so on. His followers were the ones in charge of the development and construction. He was responsible for urging them loudly from behind. "We need to build a road here, as soon as possible. The Golden Dragon Valley needs to mine ores immediately. Put it at the top of the priority list. The construction of the Dragon Valley must also be put on the agenda. I need to see you busy. Advisor Gort, the plantation must be fully developed, and the rubber tree transplant must be prepared as soon as possible. The first thing you do when you come to Flame Island is to preside over the development of the plantation and transfer all the Sprite worm stalks from Black Horse Island and Hot Spring Island to Infernal City. Also, take care of the native elves of Flame Island. President Chris, is the cultivation of the crystal cyathea not completed? The Guild of Magic is too inefficient. I hope you can immediately reorganize the research topics of the association and pull Lars and the other great mages who are getting dizzy from studying nature magic to topics that are beneficial to the territory. Captain Duarte, the incorporation of the Moonslayers can continue, and don't forget to track down the whereabouts of the statues. We haven't found the hands of 3 statues. The leader moved his mouth, and the subordinates ran all over the place. This was basically the current situation of the development of Flame Island. However, under the temptation of war glory, no one complained. On the contrary, all the immigrants of the Flame territory were busy. It was too easy to obtain war glory. Compared to fighting on the battlefield, they only needed to do engineering, draw maps, and incorporate the Moonslayers to get war glory. For the night, the danger was not as great as hunting in the forest. Using benefits to guide people was far easier to arouse the enthusiasm of followers and subjects than using strength to oppress them. This was a truth that List understood long ago. His subordinates worked hard, and he had leisure time. He allocated time to train with the 4-headed dragon, cultivated feelings with the man-eating tree dragon Elf Carly, and eliminated some powerful World of Warcraft. Time flew, and it was already mid-May. News came from Black Horse Island that the negotiation team of the Eagle Kingdom had arrived. "Father, please preside over this negotiation on my behalf." List went directly to Tulip Island, which was under development, and found Marquis Oxtail. He was the Dragon Knight, the future king of the Fire Kingdom. Naturally, it was not suitable for him to attend the negotiation. William replied without hesitation, "All right." Subsequently, this was the second time he rode on a dragon. It was still the gray iron dragon. List now liked to ride an adult gray-mouthed iron dragon with a wingspan of 60 meters. It looked more domineering. Similarly, the fire dragon Leo possessed him, the formless dragon Bard followed him, and the light green gemstone dragon stayed behind. After passing through the Heart Reed teleportation formation and galloping, he arrived at Black Horse Island. On the way, the father and son had already determined the bottom line of the negotiation. List only needed to show his face and entertain the negotiation team with a banquet. After that, he could stay behind the scenes and wait for the results of the negotiation. The head of the negotiation team of the Eagle Kingdom was a marquis from the royal family, Alexander Moonlight Silver. The deputy head was the foreign minister of the Grey Iron Duchy, a marquis from the Grey Iron family, Perlo Grey Iron. During the banquet, Duke Piero, who had spent more than a month as a captive, was also arranged between the seats. He could even participate in the negotiations in person. After all, he was still the Duke of the Grey Iron Duchy. Even if he returned home, he would almost be thrown out of office by his family and ministers. Losing the dragon was a sin that even the ruler of a country could not afford to bear. Perlo, how is the situation in the country? Duke Piero asked hopefully. The Eagle Kingdom had finally sent someone to negotiate. He would soon be free. Perlo glanced at his former lord. His captivity did not make him gaunt and dim. On the contrary, Duke Piero's face was ruddy. During his time on Black Horse Island, the food was good. He thought he would not eat or drink. Who knew that he would fall in love with the food here? He would eat a lot of food every day except for potions and World of Warcraft meat. Duke. Perlo used a strange title. He used to call him Your Highness. Duke Piero's face suddenly turned cold. A bad feeling quickly rose from the bottom of his heart. Perlo, what's going on? The atmosphere of the banquet was not lively. Only Marquis Lee William and Marquis Alexander were chatting. Perlo replied in a low voice, "We will try our best to ransom you back to our country, but I hope that your excellency can conduct yourself with dignity. At this point, the Grey Iron family can no longer bear any more losses. This negotiation will be led by Marquis Alexander." "What do you mean?" Marquis Piero's face instantly turned red. His voice unconsciously became louder, attracting the attention of everyone at the banquet. But he quickly returned to normal and continued to talk as if he did not see the quarrel between Piero and Perlo. Perlo coughed, a little embarrassed. "This is the family's decision. Please don't blame me. You caused the current situation because of the royal family's war. Marquis Alexander will represent the royal family and deal with it. I hope the Duke will not do anything embarrassing." Duke Piero was about to fly into a rage, but he couldn't vent his anger. After a moment, his red face turned purple. He suddenly lost his breath. In an instant, he seemed to have aged more than 10 years. He understood his current situation. His family and the royal family had betrayed him. On the second day of the negotiation, this was also verified. Alexander, Perlo, and Lee William haggled with each other, completely ignoring his opinion and treating him as if he was heir. Why? I fought for the Eagle Kingdom. I am not responsible for losing the dragon. Why did you betray me? My wife, my good son, Pitford, and the high and mighty Adonis Moonlight Silver, you also betrayed me and threw me aside after using me? Duke Piero was sitting on the edge of the negotiating table. His mood was extremely complicated and he was also extremely angry. He thought that his family would try their best to redeem him. Even if he lost the dragon, he could make a comeback and regain his glory. However, at this moment all his beliefs had collapsed. His favorite son, his most trusted king, and even his relatives and friends had abandoned him. You betrayed me. Betrayed me. Duke Piero shouted silently in his heart, his eyes red. However, no one cared about his self-reproach. They were all busy arguing about the amount of the ransom. Oxtail Marquis took the initiative and did not want to back down. On behalf of the King of the Fire Kingdom, Listfire, I repeat our bottom line. His voice was not loud, but it was very calm. First, it is not limited to the Grey Iron family or the Eagle Royal family. A dragon elf that is not more than 200 years old must be a grain or potion-type dragon elf. Second, the 400,000 serfs, including 30,000 craftsmen, must have a reasonable age distribution. Third, a certain amount of jades, potions, metals, gems, armors, and weapons. If the above 3 conditions are met, Duke Piero's freedom will be returned. Alexander argued loudly, Marquis Lee William, this is blatant robbery. Lee William smiled. You can understand it that way. Oh, right? Chapter 904. It was normal that they could not come to any conclusion after a whole day. Since it was a negotiation, they had to argue for a few days. However, in the evening, Duke Piero came to visit Liszt. Liszt happened to be chatting with William over tea, so he invited him into the study. The study of the Thorn Castle was huge. It was filled with all kinds of books, and it was full of art. It was said that the study was the best place to reflect a man's character. List's study was the portrayal of a gentleman in his inner world. Duke Piero, you'll be free in a few days. What brings you here at this time? Liszt gestured for the Duke to sit. Piero did not stand on ceremony and sat down. He took a cup of green tea from a servant and drank half of it. I'm afraid you two are laughing at me in your hearts. As a sinner who lost the dragon, even if I can go back, my position as a duke will come to an end. He was right. Liszt did laugh at him in his heart, but he did not say it out loud. There's always a winner and a loser in a war. Duke Piero, I'm sorry to have participated in an unwise battle to slay a dragon. In fact, my target was either Alex White Iron or Alonso Cyclamen. I did choose the wrong target. I admit that you took the Grey King away. Duke Piero nodded and said calmly, the change from a king to a prisoner made me see many problems clearly. To be honest, if it wasn't for the dignity of the Eagle royal family, I'm afraid no one would come to save me. Liszt and William looked at each other, but they did not say anything. While the father and son were chatting, William Lee was still complaining about how difficult it was to negotiate. The Eagle Kingdom and the Grey Iron Duchy only wanted to save face at the lowest price. They did not care about Duke Piero. Therefore, they did not agree to such an exorbitant price. Duke Piero continued, I used to hate Prince Liszt. I hated him day and night. But today I was betrayed by someone close to me. My hatred for Prince Piero is gone. Being captured and defeated means that the winner gets everything. The most hateful thing is betrayal. William pretended to comfort him. Considering the interests of the family, they might have their own difficulties. Marquis, do you think I'm talking about family betrayal? Duke Piero shook his head. No, no, no. I resent them for betraying me, especially my son. But if I were him, I would do the same. Preserving the family's strength is more important than saving a captive like me. Then who are you talking about? It's Adonis Moonlight Silver. The Eagle King? Why did he betray you? Liszt still did not understand Piero's intentions. At first, he thought that Piero wanted to rely on him out of anger, but that was impossible. After all, he still had to exchange him for the dragon elf. How could a useless sky knight be compared to a dragon elf? Piero quickly explained, I used to think that Adonis, Lloyd, and I were an iron triangle. As the two most loyal vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom, Lure and I both grew up in the Eagle Kingdom. We were both selected for the Dragon Knight selection program. It's just that I lacked talent and didn't get the Grey King's approval. Although he was middle-aged, Piero still felt that the Iron Triangle was like a family. So when the Eagle royal family launched a dragon-slaying war, he and Lure Purple Copper immediately responded. Unfortunately, Lure died in battle and he was captured. I thought that even if my family chose to abandon me, Adonis would not. I fought for the dignity of the Eagle royal family and for Adonis' friendship, but now I've become an insignificant nobody. Adonis didn't even send anyone to comfort me. His voice gradually rose. Piero became more agitated as he spoke. This is humiliation. This is betrayal. He betrayed my friendship and the interests of the Iron Duchy of Grey. Traitors do not deserve to be forgiven. So, Duke Piero, what are you trying to say? Liszt did not care much about the emotional world of an old Chinibu. It was not like the ups and downs of a night novel. I want to take revenge on Adonis. I need your help, Your Highness. Piero finally made his intentions clear. How can I help you? I can give you all the information I know about the Eagle Kingdom, including the grandson of Marquis Bull. In exchange for your support, I will return to the Iron Duchy. In the future, the Iron Duchy will serve the Fire Kingdom. Without waiting for Liszt to speak, Lee Williams said directly, Duke Piero, do you think this is possible? The Iron Duchy has already lost its dragon, which means that your country will cease to exist in a few years. Even if we support your return, what will you use to suppress the country and repay the Fire Kingdom? Of course there will be repayment. Tell me about it. The grandson of Marquis Bull, Andre, is attacking a new dragon. As far as I know, he will succeed soon. If I am willing to give you the information about this dragon, would you be willing to protect the Iron Duchy for 20 years? 20 years. I believe that within 20 years, Your Highness will destroy the Eagle Kingdom, Duke Piero said with a strange look of determination. If the Iron Duchy has not found a new dragon by then, I am willing to give up all my wealth and become an ordinary duke in the Fire Kingdom. After listening to Duke Piero's words, Liszt gradually narrowed his eyes and began to think about whether what the other party said was true or false. Originally, he didn't care much about André. He was the enemy of the Sapphire Grand Duke. No matter how talented he was, he would first retaliate against the Sapphire family. Moreover, even if he became a Dragon Knight, what could he do? Would he dare to act violently in front of a Dragon Knight with 4 dragons? But the news of André attacking a new dragon aroused a strong interest in him. What new dragon is he attacking? A very magical dragon. Although it is not comparable to His Highness Invisible Dragon, it is more magical than ordinary metal dragons and gem dragons. If not for this dragon, how could the Marquis Bull dare to rebel against the Sapphire family? Duke Piero leaned back in his chair. As long as Liszt was interested, he would have the initiative. Lee Williams suddenly asked, Duke Piero, do you think the Fire Kingdom can destroy the Eagle Kingdom in 20 years? With the momentum of His Highness Liszt's development, I think there is hope. Of course, it is more of a bet on the future. Without a dragon, the Iron Duchy will lose the kingdom sooner or later. Instead of becoming an ordinary noble, why not gamble? The Holy Dragon Knight that has not been born for many years has appeared. Why can't the Eagle Kingdom be destroyed? What he said was very reasonable. Liszt could not refute and did not want to refute. First tell me what dragon André is attacking. If I am interested, it is not impossible to agree to your conditions. After a little hesitation, Duke Piero nodded. I believe in His Highness' integrity. The dragon that André conquered is the biggest secret of the Eagle Kingdom. I accidentally overheard his drunken confession at a banquet with Adonis and secretly investigated it. Only then did I discover this secret. Chapter 905. Mithril was light as a feather, adamantine was indestructible, and orichalcum was indestructible. These were the 3 types of magical metals on the legendary continent. Currently, only these 3 types of magical metals were known to exist on the market. Of course, Liszt still had a batch of magical metals from the Sun's Child, blue iron and plastic aluminum. These magic metals were very compatible with magic and were excellent magic conductors. They also had unique properties. Whether it was to create magical equipment or standard weapons, they were all top-notch raw materials. Therefore, the price was always high, and only a few nobles could enjoy it. There were no magical metal dragons in the 3 kingdoms. It was said that only the empire of the legendary continent had magical metal dragons, mithril dragons, adamantine dragons, and orichalcum dragons. He did not expect that the Eagle Kingdom would actually find an orichalcum dragon, and even let André Sapphire, the grandson of Marquis Bull, attack it. Very soon, Duke Piero told him what he knew, but he hid the location of the orichalcum. Andrea's mother was the daughter of a marquis in the Kingdom of Eagle. They got to know each other because of the war, so Andrea learned the skills of the Iron Knight in the territory of the marquis when he was a child. It was hard to say whether Andre's parents got married because of love, or if the Eagle Kingdom could arrange it. In any case, the Bull family had long been involved with the Eagle Kingdom. In the end, André was born. Speaking of which, André was not only extremely talented, but he was also extremely lucky. One time, he had followed his lord into the mountains to hunt, and they had accidentally discovered traces of an orichalcum dragon. Of course, although the orichalcum dragon showed a certain degree of affinity towards André, its prideful personality would not allow it to pay attention to a nobody, much less allow someone to ride it. André's fortuitous encounter was quickly made known to the elders of his family, as well as to the Eagle royal family, who were watching closely from behind. Adonis had originally planned to capture the orichalcum dragon and slowly subdue it, but he discovered that the orichalcum dragon was extremely powerful. After all, the orichalcum dragon was indestructible, and its battle prowess far exceeded that of the white iron dragon. Even without the Dragon Knight, the Dragon Knight of the royal family was defeated and fled. Therefore, in the end, the Eagle royal family decided to support Andrei to ride the dragon. They had spent a large amount of resources to help Andrei conquer the Orichalcum dragon, and they had already reached a crucial point. It was said that as long as one had the chance to engage in a spiritual battle, they would definitely be acknowledged by the Orichalcum dragon and become a powerful magical metal dragon knight. Your Highness, although Andrei has reached the level of a sword saint at the age of 18, he is nothing compared to your terrifying talent. If your Highness can casually snatch the gray-mouth iron dragon and the light green gemstone dragon, I believe that it will be easy for you to ride the mountain copper dragon. I hope that the value of this information can represent my sincerity. Duke Piero said. It also revealed Andrei's talent. He had become a sword saint at the age of 18, so it was obvious that he had become a sky knight at the age of 16, or even earlier. However, Liszt had long since stopped paying attention to other people's talents. There were countless geniuses in this world. Even his follower, Emily, who had become a sky knight at the age of 14, was not to be underestimated. It wasn't scary at all, because he was possessed by the power of destiny. However, Liszt was fatally tempted by the Orichalcum. The value of the mana metal was one thing, and the Orichalcum's combat ability was another. I still have 2 enchanting dragon soul fruits. I'll keep one in case I form a contract with the fairy dragon in the future, and I can spare the other to ride the dragon. So, should I use this enchanting dragon soul fruit to ride the Orichalcum? He slowly pondered. If he did not rely on the enchanting dragon soul fruit, there was no way he could successfully ride the dragon. After all, he had already ridden 4 dragons. With the arrogant nature of dragons, unless there was external interference, there was no way they would lower their heads to Liszt. Little fire dragon Leo was too young and did not understand the evil of the human heart. He mistakenly ate the enchanting dragon soul fruit and lost his body and mind. The light green gemstone dragon Issen was heavily injured and on the verge of death. The invisible dragon Bard was scared out of his wits when he was lost in the world outside of the material world. He used the smoke grass to get to his head and muddle-headedly established a dragon rider relationship. The gray-mouth iron dragon was unwilling to submit. In the end, under external pressure, he ate the enchanting dragon soul fruit and had his soul imprint erased by Liszt. In short, if he took the normal route of riding a dragon, he would not be able to ride a dragon. Even if he severely injured a dragon to the verge of death, as long as his soul was not damaged, he still could not ride the dragon. To ride the Orichalcum dragon, he had to take out an enchanting dragon soul fruit. I originally wanted to keep one more fruit to contract the holy dragon, but the opportunity does not come again. It's decided on you, Orichalcum dragon. When Achi has time, I'll study the legs of the emerald dragon with her. Maybe I can even plant a new enchanting dragon soul fruit and contract as many dragons as I have. Although he had made up his mind, he did not show it on his face. He responded to Duke Piero, "How about this? I need to think about the pros and cons. You can go back and wait. The negotiation will not be completed in a day or 2. Not to mention that it involves supporting you to return to your country and continue to be a duke. I believe that as long as your Highness is willing, the Eagle Kingdom will not dare to stop you. The Iron and Steel Ridge should be very willing to see a weak eagle. The Blast Furnace Castle is the same. Only a weak eagle can bow its head, so they have more energy to deal with the more distant kingdom," Duke Piero added. Liszt smiled. "I also hope so. Duke Piero, my father will contact you more often. He will be in charge of the Fire Kingdom's diplomatic affairs." Duke Piero, who was ready to turn over a new leaf, was sent away. Liszt and Llewellyn carefully discussed for a long time in the study. Finally, Liszt made the decision. Reach an agreement with Piero as soon as possible. Let him tell me the location of the Orichalcum dragon and Andrei. I'll personally confirm the authenticity. If it's true, then we must get the Orichalcum dragon. Will the Eagle Kingdom agree to our request? Llewellyn was a little uncertain. Reduce Duke Piero's ransom. Just one dragon spirit will do. But the Eagle Kingdom must sign a contract with the power of the contract to ensure that Piero will continue to be the Duke of the Grey Iron Duchy and open the trade channel between the Grey Iron Duchy and the Fire Kingdom. I'm afraid that the Eagle Kingdom won't let Piero live for long. As long as I ride the Orichalcum dragon, it doesn't matter if Piero is dead or not. Do you really expect him to send the wealth of the Grey Iron Duchy to me? Liszt liked to grasp the essence of things. The essence of this issue was the Orichalcum dragon. As long as he got the Orichalcum dragon, he would make a lot of money. Llewellyn was used to making decisions based on Liszt's decision. How should we negotiate with the Eagle Kingdom about the dragon-slaying war? The Eagle Kingdom must issue a statement of apology and officially recognize the legal status of the Fire Kingdom. As for compensation, a batch of resources will suffice. Even if I can't get it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'll get it myself in the future. Piero was right about one thing. I hope to destroy the Eagle Kingdom within 20 years. Llewellyn frowned. As your father, I'm very happy that you're ambitious. But aren't you biting off more than you can chew? I don't think so. Although the Fire Kingdom hasn't been established yet, it's weak and has a small population. However, it doesn't lack high-end combat power. 20 years is enough for me to train a few Dragon Knights. By then, with my ability, it won't be a problem for me to lead a large number of dragons and Dragon Knights to conquer the northeast corner of the legendary continent. He shook the teacup in his hand. His gaze seemed to be peeking into the long river of fate. The fate of countless people flowed slowly in the river. His voice became faintly discernible. To put it nicely, this world is ruled by the knight. However, to the dragon-raising family, the knight is just a dedicated servant for the family. The dragon is the core of the world. Serfs, commoners, and knight work hard and fight. They just contribute food, clothing, and other resources to a small number of families. The so-called night war, the so-called country, and the people. It's just a game played by a group of people standing at the top of the pyramid. Father, because of my appearance, the Tulip family is destined to be like the Flame family in the future. They'll become the small group of people who control the game. Chapter 906. This chapter was updated by Baby 666. There was no one who didn't desire dragons, just like how Liszt was still attracted by the Orichalcum despite having so many dragons. He couldn't help but start his plan. When Llewellyn heard that the Tulip family also had a chance to ride a dragon, his heartbeat sped up. However, he quickly felt relieved. The kingdom had to carry out the Dragon Knight plan. As long as the Tulip family had a talented child, it was natural for them to be selected. Although the Bull Marquis was a bad choice, they were still related by blood. Furthermore, as long as the soul imprint belonged to the Flame family, outsiders would just be employees no matter how they rode the dragon. They couldn't possibly ride the dragon away. Llewellyn's thoughts had changed a lot recently. He no longer paid attention to the Tulip family. After all, the Flame family only had Liszt. As long as Liszt was in power, his protection and favor for the Tulip family would never end. Perhaps one day, the Tulip family would become a true dragon-rearing family. Furthermore, there was one important point. Whether it was the Tulip family or the Flame family, they were both his descendants. Liszt was his son. To Llewellyn, life was already perfect. Now he just hoped that his eldest son, Levis, could also enjoy wealth. His youngest son, Lytton, could also bask in some glory. Your brother's talent is limited. The future of the Tulip family will be in Richard's hands sooner or later. I hope Richard can raise them up. As his uncle, you have to guide him. Don't worry. As long as Richard has talent, I won't let it go to waste. Liszt was quite fond of this cute nephew of his. Due to his transmigration, he didn't have much affection for his family. However, he had watched Richard grow up at 2 years old. His mental age wasn't that young anymore. Although he had never been a parent, his feelings for children had gradually changed. Young people always find children annoying, but older people usually like children very much. Liszt, who looked down on the world, was no exception. 2 contacts. Duke Piero quickly gave Andre and the Orichalcum dragons information after the benefits were clear. This location is adjacent to the Snowwind Mountain Principality, a vassal state of the Kingdom of Yellowstone. This area is the undeveloped southern region of the wasteland of the Eagle Kingdom. The terrain here is complex and undulating. There are many cliff-like mountain ranges. The Copper Mountain dragons live here. It seems that the Eagle royal family calls this place the Hengduan Mountains. Hengduan Mountain. List raised his eyebrows as he recalled that he was no stranger to this place. He had read about it in a book collected by the Bull Marquis. The book was written by a sorcerer of the Silver Moon Gathering named Sven Truth and given to Alonso Cyclamen as a gift. It had no title, but on the cover was a dragon with its head and tail attached. It was unknown how it had ended up on Marquis Bull's desk, but List had coincidentally taken it away during the attack on Juniper Castle. He called the book the Dragon Raising Handbook, which recorded all the research the Silver Moon Assembly had done on dragons. The Silver Moon Assembly was a magic organization of the Eagle Kingdom. The reason why Sven had given Alonso the book was probably because he wanted to invest in Alonso before he became a Dragon Knight. As a candidate for the Dragon Knight project, Alonso was obviously a person worthy of investment in the early days, and he had indeed succeeded in riding a dragon. The Dragon Raising Handbook mentioned that Sven had studied the Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains. Thinking of this, List's eyes flashed slightly. He said calmly, "Isn't there a Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains?" Earth Dragon? Duke Piero was stunned for a moment, but he did not panic. He was just very surprised. "Your Highness, you know something about the Hengduan Mountains?" "Why? I don't know if there are Earth Dragons in the Hengduan Mountains, but when I sent the rats to investigate, they did find out that there was once an Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains. Then the Hengduan Mountains became the residence of the Copper Mountain Dragon, and it has been living there for nearly 3 years. Piero wanted to ask why List knew about the Hengduan Mountains, but it was obvious that List had no intention of explaining. He just nodded. "Go on." "One of my rats mixed with Andre as a servant. In order to ride a dragon, Andre did a lot of research with the help of the Eagle Kingdom. The key to riding an Copper Mountain Dragon is the quality of the knight. It needs to be unyielding, indomitable, fearless, and know how to sacrifice oneself. Only in this way can the Copper Mountain Dragon be moved." Every time Duke Piero mentioned the qualities of the Copper Mountain Dragon, List's face would turn a little darker. Although he had these qualities, they were not perfect. Obviously, there was almost no hope of riding an Copper Mountain Dragon using conventional methods. Even if he knew this would be the result, he still felt bad. So how far did Andre go? He did not believe that there was really someone else with such high qualities other than himself. Duke Piero laughed sarcastically. "Andre may be the descendant of a traitor, but he is really an excellent knight. In order to prepare a kind of bird egg that the Copper Mountain Dragon likes to eat, he personally climbed a cliff and went into a cave to get the egg while being attacked by a group of World of Warcraft birds. His skin was pecked to pieces. There were many similar actions. As expected, he was willing to sacrifice himself for the Orichalcum dragons. The location of the Copper Mountain Dragon was confirmed. List then started to prepare the strategy, leaving the negotiation team to Lee William. The smoke mission was to force all 3 kingdoms to acknowledge the Fire Kingdom. The emissaries from Steel Ridge and Furnace Castle had not arrived yet, so there was no need to hurry with the negotiation team. Duke Piero could not let him go now, in case he had ulterior motives. The so-called Copper Mountain Dragon was just a cover to trap List. "The Copper Mountain Dragon is very strong. I need help." The Gray Iron Dragon stayed on Black Horse Island for the time being to deter the negotiation team and Duke Piero, and also to hide his whereabouts. He decided to take the Light Emerald Dragon Ethan, and let Ethan set off from Flame Island towards the legendary continent. Ethan's speed was not fast enough, and following the invisible dragon would slow the team down. He himself would take the little fire dragon Leo, the invisible dragon Bard, and the magic shooter Chi and follow closely behind. The whole journey is expected to take a week to get the Copper Mountain Dragon. By the way, I can contact Yevich. I don't know how his investigation in Snowwind Mountain Principality is going. When Ethan started to set off, List quickly dealt with the official business of the territory, then filled up with supplies, appeared briefly on Black Horse Island, and quietly left. The Fire Islands were about 1,700 kilometers away from the legendary continent, but their geographical location was much better than that of the Sapphire Islands. In the middle of the straight sailing journey, there were other islands as supply points and outposts. After flying for 500 kilometers, List and his party landed in a large archipelago, the unnamed Third Archipelago. There were many islands, but they were fragmented. None of them was larger than Black Horse Island, and the development potential was very low. However, it was a good supply point. In the future, the Fire Kingdom might be able to build several port cities here. Of course, if the magic transmission array connected directly to the legendary continent was opened, it didn't matter whether the island was supplied or not. After a short stop, they flew another 500 kilometers and saw a large island. The area of the island should not be smaller than Coral Island from a high altitude, and it was also a place suitable for development as a supply island. After flying another 700 kilometers, they would reach the coastline of the legendary continent. There was no human habitation here, or rather, there was no human habitation within 100 kilometers. Hundreds of kilometers deep was the small village at the edge of Snowwind Mountain Principality, the hunter's village that Yevich had encountered before. List took out a map. List and Achi studied it for a moment. Where we are is the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. To the west is Snowwind Mountain Principality, and to the northwest is the direction of the Hengduan Mountains. But we first have to determine the location of the Rhine River. The Hengduan Mountains is the birthplace of the Rhine River, so we won't get lost along the river. While talking, a dragon roared. The light emerald dragon Ethan had followed the connection with List's mind and came to gather. It arrived at the legendary continent a day ahead of time and rested in the nearby forest. Achi, you ride Bart, I'll ride Ethan. Let's find the mouth of the Rhine River first. Yes. Roar. Woo! 2 people and 3 dragons continued the journey of finding and riding the dragon. At this very moment, on the top of a cliff thousands of kilometers away, a giant golden dragon that was in deep sleep suddenly woke up from its snoring. An indescribable feeling made its heart palpitate. But as it woke up, the feeling quickly disappeared. It looked at the bottom of the cliff doubtfully. A knight was flying and flashing beside a gray-white tent. Chapter 907. Blue sky, white clouds, green mountains, and clear waters. Flying upstream along the Rhine River, List, who was riding on the back of the emerald dragon Ethan, closed his eyes and used Ethan's eyes to see the road. The magic eye secret technique did not work well with Ethan, or rather, the effect was not good. It was only slightly clearer than when List used it alone. Needless to say, the aura reduction did not reduce the Dragon Knight's energy consumption, and the spiral rotation did not have much effect. It had to be said that other than producing emeralds, Ethan was very mediocre in other aspects. This emerald dragon's combat power was probably the lowest among all the dragons. Little fire dragon Leo was only 3 years old this year, but with the supreme magic supply from the endless volcanoes and the help of List's potions, his growth was rapid, and his ability to fight head-on had already surpassed Ethan. The reason why he brought Ethan here was to deepen the soul imprint so that Ethan could train with Emily as soon as possible. Roar! In List's mind, the shadow of the knight on Ethan's back became clearer. Every time List entered Ethan's mind, he deepened the shadow's imprint. This strange training method was different from any other system, and it was exclusive to dragons and the first generation of Dragon Knight. But to List, no matter how many dragons he had, he was still the first generation of Dragon Knight. To this day, my personal strength has increased very little, and I'm completely relying on supporting dragons to fight. What would the cultivation system above Dragon Knights be? Just what should I do to become stronger? As Ethan's soul imprint became clearer, he gradually felt that his strength had reached a bottleneck. This bottleneck was common to all Dragon Knight in the northeast corner of the legendary continent. When the dragon warrior energy was cultivated to the peak, the dragon's strength would also reach the peak. At this time, both man and dragon fell into a shackle that they could not break free from. It was called a perfect dragon night. List rode on 4 dragons, but he still could not break free from this shackle. He was a fire-attributed knight, and his coordination with Leo was the most perfect and flawless. His cooperation with Ethan, Bard, and Aun would be a little sluggish, but fortunately, the dragon magic belonged to the supreme magic level, and there was no hindrance in cooperating with any dragon combat energy. Even a fire attribute knight riding a water dragon could train and fight together. Although a knight can ride a dragon at will, I have a faint feeling that if I want to break through to the level of a dragon knight, not only do I need to train my soul, I also need to have a closer connection between the dragon and the knight. Perhaps Leo is the best partner for me to break through. Roar! Ethan sensed List's inattention and immediately roared in dissatisfaction. List smiled and comforted her. I know you don't like Leo, and you don't like me either, but soon, I will choose a more suitable knight for you. Ethan. She's an extremely talented female knight. She's a sky knight at the age of 14. She's an unprecedented existence. Roar. Ethan signaled for List to bring her over quickly. Although the soul brand of the first-generation Dragon Knight was erased in the soul battle, and Ethan's body and mind belonged to List, he didn't lose his memory, and he still had a grudge against List. Plus, List didn't have the qualities that he recognized, so it was still a little uncomfortable. Even though the spiritual connection and the power of the soul brand made it impossible for him to escape the intimate connection with List until he died of old age. But this didn't stop Ethan from wanting to change to another knight. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aun also had the same idea. That Iron Dragon had a lot of complaints against List, who asked him to be ridden by List when he was awake. This nightmarish memory would probably be engraved in his dragon life, and he would never forget it. It's better to raise him up. Leo is an evil dragon. Although he will have evil thoughts and return to his wild nature from time to time, his feelings for me are absolutely great. He muttered to himself with emotion. Ethan let out another disdainful roar. Roar! On the other side, the invisible dragon Bard was quite happy. He was carrying a chi on his back. Although the Dragon Fang platform wouldn't open to a chi, and spellcasters couldn't establish a power connection with dragons, he liked a chi very much. However, it liked a chi very much, and this affection was based on a chi's understanding and knowledge of space. He deeply knew that compared to List, a chi was the one who could guide him on how to grow. Unfortunately, she wasn't a knight. Wuxia! Bard turned his head and glanced at a chi, who was holding a scepter and studying it on his back. A chi looked up at Bard and responded with a perfunctory smile. Bard was instantly happy, but he didn't know that a chi didn't really like him. The reason was simple. Bard liked to chew the smoke grass too much. Although a dragon's digestive ability was strong, and even their saliva had a strong digestive ability, there wouldn't be any residual temperature. But when they chewed, the strange stench would spread everywhere. Every time this happened, a chi would take out 3 masks designed by List and cover her nose tightly. It was the same now. Bard didn't know where to hide the smoke grass that List had prepared for him. Whenever he was happy, he would silently take out a handful of smoke grass and grind it between his teeth. The stench immediately drifted with the wind. Big Brother must have ridden Ethan because he doesn't like the smell of the smoke grass. A chi thought. She quickly took out 3 masks and put them on. Even with the masks, the stench still lingered in her nose. She could only endure it in silence and then focus her attention on the scepter of time in her hand. Along the way, she had been studying the time gemstone on top of the scepter of time. The ancient book of knowledge's appraisal of the scepter of time was Twilight Dragon Gemstone, Golden Apple Wood, Time Reflection. But even after studying for a long time, she still couldn't figure out how to activate the time gemstone, what effect the golden apple would had, and the meaning of time reflection. She looked at her own figure on every side of the time gemstone. There was the face of a little siren when she was young, and there was the face of an old siren. It was as if all the changes in her life were engraved in the time gemstone. Unlike the aging of humans, Sirens didn't change much even when they were old. It looked like they only had a little more crow's feet at the corner of their eyes. Am I gonna look like this when I'm old? Achi's body was already an adult, but her mentality was still that of a siren girl. She was ignorant about many things related to adulthood. Achi wants to grow old with Big Brother. But Big Brother wants to contract a fairy dragon. Then what about Achi? She was in a trance, and her hands unconsciously circulated magic. At this moment, the magic that should have decayed upon contact with the time gemstone was unexpectedly not erased by the power of time. Instead, it slowly seeped into the time gemstone. Then, the invisible dragon bard in Achi's eyes suddenly became a little bigger, as if his wingspan had suddenly increased from 15 meters to 20 meters when he was an adult. And on the dragon Fong platform on its back, a knight wearing armor cast by flames slowly turned his head. The figure seemed to be illusory, but also seemed real. That face was also familiar yet strange to Achi. It was clearly List's face, but his beard was unshaven, as if he was middle-aged. Only his eyes were still as clear as ever. When the knight saw Achi, his eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he smiled full of the temperament of a mature man and said a sentence. His voice was faintly discernible, as if it was right next to her ear, but also seemed to be at the edge of the sky. Achi, time cannot be stopped. I will conquer the land of exile. Big Brother. Achi looked at the scene in front of her in surprise. However, before she could say anything, the strange illusory and real scene in front of her suddenly dissipated. The invisible dragon still had a wingspan of 15 meters. There was no knight on the dragon Fong platform, and the stench of the smoke grass was still slowly drilling into her nostrils. Chapter 908. Big Brother, come here. After trying to trigger the scepter of time again to no avail, Achi decisively called for List. He jumped off Ethan's back and quickly caught him, then sat on the dragon tooth platform. What's wrong? Just now, Achi accidentally triggered the scepter of time and saw a very strange scene. Bard is an adult and Big Brother is also a middle-aged man, wearing a suit of armor condensed from flames, and said something to Achi. Achi imitated the voice in the scene. Achi, time cannot be stopped. I will conquer the land of exile. Time cannot be stopped. I will conquer the land of exile? List rubbed his chin. Conquer the land of exile. This domineering tone suits me, but what does time cannot be stopped mean? Achi, describe the scene you saw in detail. Achi described the scene she saw in detail, including the appearance of the adult invisible dragon, List's middle-aged appearance, the surprised look in his eyes, the tone of his voice, and the armor on his body. List then carefully pondered. The armor condensed from flames reminded him of Leo. It was probably a new chi secret technique he had developed, and the effect of using it together with Leo. It could also be some kind of divine artifact-level magical equipment. Time cannot be stopped. Achi, how did you see this scene? I don't know. Achi was just thinking about what Big Brother would look like in the future, and then I saw it. If not for the Time Diamond's mana being severely depleted, Achi would have thought it was an illusion, but the scene was extremely clear. If that's the case, it's possible that the Time Diamond presented the scene of the future in front of you. Right, you said that I have a stubble in the scene? Yes. List immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It seems that it's only a possibility in the future, and a very unlikely possibility. Achi, you should understand the reason. The first thing I do every morning is shave. As a great dragon knight, a noble king, personal image is very important. He did not like to keep a beard, and basically shaved it off before it grew out. Besides, I, your Big Brother, am the embodiment of the knight's glory. Even fate has to submit to me. How can a mere time gemstone see the future? List didn't feel that the Time Diamond's image was the future. That was because the future had countless possibilities and wasn't fixed. Even the smoke dragon that toyed with fate would experience death, and the remnant power of fate would be attached to his body. The dusk dragon that represented time hadn't been born for many years, which meant that it had also died. If such a mystical dragon couldn't even control its own future, how could it control the futures of others? But, Big Brother, time cannot be blocked. Does that mean that a Chi will die before Big Brother? Sirens only have a lifespan of 400 or 500 years. If Big Brother forms a contract with the fairy dragon, he will be able to live forever. Perhaps the time gemstone will be able to see such a scene. A Chi said with a girlish heart. Her eyes were slightly misty, as if she was thinking of something romantic. Two people who loved each other but couldn't be together, parting with each other in tears. List chuckled. If I can't enjoy life with a Chi, what's the point of forming a contract with the fairy dragon? A Chi, don't let your imagination run wild. He rubbed a Chi's azure blue hair hard. How could he let go of a Chi in this life? Not even for a moment. He concluded forcefully. The time diamond only provides a possibility. Perhaps it is based on what you think in your heart and produces a picture of the future. You think that separation and death are very romantic, so it gives you a picture of separation and death. Yes. After List's enlightenment, a Chi also felt that the future was full of variables, and it was impossible to have a fixed fate. List suddenly said, but conquering a great hegemony like the land of exile is very much in line with my appetite. If the land of exile really exists, I will conquer it sooner or later. There are too many magnificent and strange places in this world. It would be a pity if I don't visit them one by one in my lifetime. A Chi also wants to see the land of exile. Don't worry. When the time comes, we will conquer the land of exile together. List took a Chi's hand, pulled her into his arms, and then held the scepter of time. Come, teach me how to touch it. I want to see what the future looks like in my eyes. If a Chi guessed correctly, the power of the time diamond needs to be combined with the wood of the golden apple. There is a legend that says that the function of the golden apple is to make people's wishes come true. Maybe Big Brother can use your heart to think about the future and activate the time diamond and see the picture of the future. I'll try. List began to imagine the future with all his strength. He had countless sketches of the future, but no matter how he imagined it, he could not activate the scepter of time. He tried to activate it with a Chi again, and a Chi tried many times, but it still did not work. Is there not enough magic? That's not right. Although a part of the magic of the time diamond has been consumed, there is still a lot of it. It shouldn't be unable to activate it. Otherwise, could it be that the ancient mage can only be used once? This should be a regular magic staff. List guessed. Perhaps there was one possibility. As a person who controls the power of fate, the time diamond can't reflect my future at all. The whole day, he did not even have time to cultivate with Ethan. He was busy activating the scepter of time, but the scepter of time did not respond at all. Instead, he was tormented by it until his head was spinning. Night. The team set up camp next to the Rhine River. He hugged the scepter of time to sleep and said to himself, "Imagine the future, imagine the future." Just like that, he was about to fall asleep in a daze. Suddenly, his vision blurred, and the crystal lamp in the tent suddenly turned into an endless starry sky. A pure white shell floated in the starry sky. She was wearing a gorgeous magic cloak and seemed to be overflowing with magic power. She had a head of beautiful blue hair, and she held a gray long sword in her hand as she gazed at the endless starry sky. As if sensing something, the female mage suddenly turned her head. It was a Chi's familiar and beautiful face, but she looked more mature, and a sweet smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She said in a voice that seemed real and illusory, "Big Brother, you're here." List's brain was a little muddled. Something is wrong. If I saw a scene from the future, why would you talk to me? Big Brother, the scepter of time has already reflected time. A Chi and Big Brother are in different times and different spaces. We found a possibility among countless possibilities and had a short conversation. Other than being surprised, List did not know what to express for a moment. At this time, a Chi had already turned around completely. The gorgeous magic cloak on her was made up of several colors, like a gorgeous dress. There were dense magic patterns on it, making her look like a goddess from the 9 heavens, noble and flawless. "Big brother, you look so young. You must ride more dragons. It's best if you ride all the dragons in the legendary continent and the Malfa continent." As Achi spoke, she suddenly looked at the starry sky behind her and frowned. "It has awakened. This fellow is even more annoying than Tulumita. Achi must hide. Oh, I forgot to remind Big Brother that the fairy dragon is in the land of exile." The next moment, Achi waved her hand casually, and a magic door appeared beside her. She smiled sweetly at List, stepped into the magic door, and disappeared without a trace. List did not understand the situation. However, in the background of the endless starry sky, a pair of eyes suddenly opened. This pair of eyes was filled with a chilling gaze. It was indescribable and impossible to look directly at. It merely glanced at List. The next moment, the illusory scene collapsed, and the scene in front of him returned to the tent with crystal lamps. However, List could not extricate himself from the gaze of that pair of eyes for a long time. His whole body was cold, as if he was frozen by thousands of years of ice. He could not move, and even his breathing and thoughts had stopped. Crack! The sound of glass shattering was like a hammer knocking on List's head, freeing him from the stagnant state just now. He panted heavily, and his heart contracted violently. He could not catch his breath. After a while, he suddenly realized that the time gemstone at the top of the scepter of time in his hand had shattered into pieces, like an ordinary gemstone that had exhausted its magic power. And the scepter made of golden apple wood had also decayed into ordinary rotten wood. Chapter 909. This chapter is Celestial Dream Traversing. List did not rush to wake Achi up for reference. He pondered quietly by himself. The impact just now made him feel uncomfortable, and it took him a while to calm his emotions. He threw away the rotten wooden stick in his hand, and the pair of eyes appeared in his mind again. What a terrifying gaze. It's even more evil than Leo's. No, it's not evil, it should be. He could not find the right word to describe it. In the end, he reluctantly used heartless to describe it. If the heavens had feelings, they would also grow old. It was a kind of heartless that all things had their own order, and no one could escape from it. What creature's eye is this? Could it be the weave dragon? When tearing apart the weave and spying on the nodes, List had once seen the weave dragon. The weave dragon sleeping in an indescribable space was terrifying and ferocious, but the weave was emitted from its body. The prosperity of magic during the era of the Moon Empire was probably because of it. If it's the weave dragon and has awakened, does it mean that magic will be revived at some point in the future? It seems that I paid attention to the wrong details. I should have paid attention to the impact of the mystic dragon's awakening. Seems to be chasing after Achi. Before Achi left, she said, "It's awake. This fellow is even more annoying than Thulamita." It was clear that the mystic dragon was not a good dragon. Back then, Achi had been chased by Thulamita for thousands of miles before she met List. "How dare you chase after Achi? Even if you're the weave dragon, I'll ride you." List clenched his fists. This scene of the future did not give him too much pressure. Because when he met the future Achi, she explained that the scepter of time's ability to reflect time was to choose one out of countless possibilities and connect it. This was similar to the theory of parallel worlds. Although he did not really understand it, he was very clear that the so-called future was a possibility, and did not mean that it was the real future. The power of time represented by the Twilight Dragon was more like a prophecy. If the future was fixed, then the power of the Twilight Dragon was a complete paradox. It could communicate with the future, affect reality, and affect reality would change the future. Just like how List saw Achi in the future, and with Achi's reminder, he rode a large number of dragons, which changed the future. The new future was obviously different from the future he had seen before. So, at this point in time, did List see the future? He picked up the broken gemstone on the ground. The broken gemstone had lost its color, and he could vaguely see the reflection of a human figure. So only the present is real. Everything else about the future and the past is fake, or rather nothingness, because the past has long passed and cannot be touched or changed. The future has yet to arrive, and every change will affect countless branches. When he was living on Earth, Liszt loved watching sci-fi movies, so he studied parallel universes, time travel, and other sci-fi topics. He had a good understanding of the time paradox. In particular, he had studied a movie called The Previous Destination. This movie was very interesting. To put it simply, the protagonist gave birth to himself, and then the protagonist who became an agent fought with the villain himself. Time was like an Ouroboros, from beginning to end, it was an endless loop. Suddenly, he thought of another possibility. What if the existence of the Twilight Dragon is to create an Ouroboros cycle like The Previous Destination ? The future Liszt that Achi saw and the future Achi that Liszt saw might be part of the Ouroboros cycle. However, as soon as this horrifying speculation arose, he rejected it. The Twilight Dragon may be able to predict the future, but the Smoke Dragon can change fate. They are both holy dragons, but the Emerald Dragon can't trick the Invisible Dragon. How can the Twilight Dragon be stronger than the Smoke Dragon? Most importantly, this was only the future predicted by a time diamond, but Liszt had a cheat life with smoke possession. The future seen by the Scepter of Time is not the real future, but the information revealed may not necessarily be false. The Mr. Dragon will eventually awaken and will not always sleep. The Fairy Dragon is located in the land of exile, and if I want to live forever, I have to go to the land of exile, and Achi will become very powerful. With a magic gate, even the Mr. Dragon can do nothing to her. So, he casually put away the time diamond and muttered to himself, I now have clues to the Smoke Dragon, the Emerald Dragon, the Dusky Dragon, and the Fairy Dragon, and I'm already riding the Invisible Dragon. The Holy Dragons are destined to be caught in one fell swoop by me. I even have a clue about the Mr. Dragon. If this counts as a clue. No matter what, whether this future was a prophecy or fate, Liszt did not need to be nervous. In the two future scenes, he and Achi were living quite well, without illness or disaster, and had become very powerful. What he needed to do now was to ride the dragon, and keep riding it until he rode all the holy dragons. So what if the Mr. Dragon was a villain boss? If it dared to do evil, he would ride it all the same. He just did not know if the Dragonfang platform would fit such a huge dragon. He had made up his mind. He walked to the tent next door, and woke the lightly sleeping Achi, telling her in detail about the future scenes he had seen. The two chatted in the tent for half the night, but they did not manage to come up with too many clues. In any case, they came to the conclusion that they needed to ride more dragons. The next dragon will definitely be the Orichalcum Dragon. Late at night, Liszt had another dream. It was still the same transparent river. A malevolent dragon whose details could not be clearly seen was fighting against another lustrous dragon whose details could not be clearly seen. He did not know where he was, but he could see that the fight was nearing its end and the fluorescent dragon was being slaughtered. Then, following a silent explosion, the fluorescent dragon chose to self-detonate. Its body turned into countless lustrous lights and fell into the pitch-black world. In that pitch-black world, there seemed to be countless plants growing, some of which even gave birth to sprite worms. The lustrous lights quickly merged with the plants and the sprite worms. The next moment, the sprite worms began to swell. Then, a small hand tore open its skin and came out from inside the sprite worm. It spread its wings and flew cheerfully. Impressively, it evolved into a lesser sprite. Then, one after another, the lesser sprites flew up and played on the transparent river. However, they did not reflect their figures on the transparent river. Instead, following the convergence of countless lesser sprites, the indistinct silhouette of a dragon rose from the transparent river. The silhouette of this dragon was similar to that of the fluorescent dragon that had self-detonated. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the pitch-black world, and a grotesquely shaped dragon claw tore through the darkness, seemingly looking for something. But smoke slowly emerged above the transparent river, concealing the fluorescent dragon's silhouette. The grotesquely shaped claw paused for a moment, and then slowly escaped into the darkness. Chapter 9-10. He felt refreshed after a good night's sleep. List could not remember what he had dreamed last night, but his goal in life was to ride all the dragons in the legendary continent and another Malfa continent. The Malfa continent was revealed by a chi in the future, but List did not know where it was specifically. When he discussed with a chi last night, he thought that the Malfa continent might be the continent where the Sun's Child lived. In ancient times, the Moon Empire unified the legendary continent, and the Sun's Child unified the Malfa continent. Separated by the Devil's Sea, the two ancient civilizations used the sky ship to travel between the two continents. Of course, it was also possible to directly establish a teleportation formation to communicate with each other, but he did not know why the Sun's Child had also declined. List still remembered the note in the plastic aluminum drift bottle. The tower collapsed, the tree city burned, XX has perished, the Sun's Child will rise into the sky with the flames, the children who are stranded outside, you are free. Perhaps this was referring to the great disaster that the Malfa continent had suffered. But some of the timeline did not match. According to the old cobbler Phil and the diary of Philip Taiyang's descendants, their ancestors were only exiled a few hundred years ago. That note probably recorded the civilization of the Sun's Child from a few hundred years ago, and not the distant ancient civilization. Moreover, List had salvaged a sunken skyship. Based on the state of decay, it was at most 1,000 years old. And the Moon Empire had been destroyed for many years, at least a few thousand years, or even tens of thousands of years. It seemed to be an ancient civilization of a different era than the Sun's Child civilization. Perhaps there is another possibility. After the Moon Empire was destroyed, the countries established by the night all claimed to have inherited the glory of the Moon Empire. Perhaps the Sun's Child civilization also had an heir, but this heir was destroyed again? He frowned, but soon he felt that he might have misunderstood. Perhaps the Sun's Child civilization was not an ancient civilization of the Moon Empire. Otherwise, there would be records of the Sun's Child in the few words passed down by the Moon Empire. Perhaps the Sun's Child is a new civilization of the Malfa continent? He even felt that the Sun's Child might also be a remnant of the Moon Empire. Just like the Moon Killer living on the Flame Island, there might be a group of remnant of the Moon Empire who crossed the Devil's Sea and settled down on the Malfa continent. One is the Moon Killer, and the other is the Sun's Child. I feel like their names are quite symmetrical. Thinking too much about some problems made his head hurt. List suppressed these problems after washing up and ate a simple breakfast with a chi. Then they continued their journey. The Copper Mountain Dragon was the most important thing at the moment. There were many tributaries in the upper reaches of the Rhine River. Fortunately, the main river was very wide. Flying along the river, they finally came to a huge mountain range at the end of May. This mountain range had many branches, but the mountain was fractured, which was the symbol of the Hengduan mountain range. Achi, we have arrived. This is the Hengduan mountain range. List took out a map from his space ring. According to the map Duke Piero gave me, there is a special strip of mountains in the Hengduan mountain range. They are arranged like blades and are very easy to identify. The Hengduan mountain range was very vast. Its surface area might be as big as a province on Earth. It was not easy to find it even on a dragon. Fortunately, List had plenty of time. He could slowly investigate from a high altitude, and he only needed to lock onto the strip of mountains. He did not let the green gem dragon Issen follow him. He and Achi rode the invisible dragon Bard and escaped into the material boundary. Bard was extremely fast and had a wide field of vision. He could also turn invisible and reduce the distance at which his aura could be exposed. He could completely avoid the detection of the Copper Mountain Dragon. Noon the next day. Suddenly, a mountain range with a special shape appeared in their field of vision. Brother, isn't that a strip of mountains? It looks like a row of blades, Achi reminded. The invisible dragon turned its head. In the crystal white orbit's field of vision, it suddenly discovered a bright golden light in that mountain range. Because it was very far away, more than 100 kilometers, the shape of the golden light could not be seen clearly. However, Liszt was certain that it was where the orichalcum drakes were. Only a supreme demon could display such a magnificent radiance in a crystal white trail. Found it! As the formless dragon approached, Liszt caught the unique aura of the orichalcum drakes. He was sure that it was a dragon. "Brother, what do we do next?" Achi asked. "I'll call Ethan over. Let Leo and Ethan hold back the Copper Mountain Dragon, and I'll go capture the traitor Andre." Liszt's eyes flashed. He had already come up with a plan that he thought was exquisite, but was actually very reckless. In short, they just had to go and do it. 3 dragons, a magic shooter, and a dragon knight. Even if the Copper Mountain Dragon was powerful and could even defeat the White Iron Dragon Knight, it would not be able to resist such a luxurious team. Especially after more than a month of training, Leo had grown by leaps and bounds. He could fight and defend, and was much stronger than when he ambushed the Gray Iron Dragon. They communicated using the Dragonheart code. Ethan, who was repairing in the distance, immediately rose and soared. He could not hold his aura, so when he was within 100 kilometers of the Copper Mountain Dragon, the golden light quickly moved. However, it did not escape from the strip of mountains. Dragons did not have a strong sense of territory, but a battle was unavoidable with an unfamiliar dragon approaching. Roar! Ethan also sensed the aura of the Copper Mountain Dragon. He let out a dragon roar and charged directly toward the Copper Mountain Dragon. Beside him was Liszt, who was riding on Bard. The 2 dragons crossed the distance of 100 kilometers in an instant, and the invisible dragon's aura could not be hidden anymore. However, the Copper Mountain Dragon did not escape. In crystal white vision, the Copper Mountain Dragon did not even use its flying posture. It was obviously highly confident in its abilities, and did not think that 2 dragons could defeat its indestructible scales. Roar! A domineering roar came from the strip of mountains. The Copper Mountain Dragon was warning Ethan and Bard, the 2 intruders. They did not need to learn dragon language to understand the warning. Roar! Wuxia! Not to be outdone, Ethan and Bard continued to fly at high speed, closing in on the Copper Mountain Dragon. When the distance between them had shrunk to 10 kilometers, the Copper Mountain Dragon finally stood up and spread its wings. Its huge wings flapped lightly, and its strong and thick hind legs stomped on the ground. Its body was already in the air, and it was charging toward Ethan and Bard. In the crystal white field of vision, it was an all-encompassing posture. What a huge dragon! Liszt was shocked. Even though Duke Piero had said that the Copper Mountain Dragon was much larger than the Iron Dragon, he was still astonished. He was already shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. This Copper Mountain Dragon's wingspan was definitely more than 70 meters, or even 80 meters. There was probably no dragon with a wingspan greater than that below the elemental dragon. Roar! Suddenly, another domineering roar interrupted the confrontation between the 3 dragons. This was the entrance of the little fire dragon, Leo. He felt the Copper Mountain Dragon's dominance, and his heart was filled with anger. No dragon could be arrogant in front of an adult fire dragon with a wingspan of 100 meters, even if it was still a fire dragon in its infancy. Boom! The flames dispersed, and Leo's body was revealed. It had already reached a wingspan and length of 35 meters, only slightly smaller than the light green gem dragon with a wingspan of 45 meters. Black and red scales flickered between light and dark. Chapter 9:11. Leo, don't be rash. Work with Ethan to restrain the orichalcum dragons. I'll be right back. Liszt instructed Ethan and Leo using the Dragonheart code. Following that, he turned around and flew toward the mountain where the orichalcum dragons used to rest. According to the clues provided by Duke Piero's mice, Andre always followed the orichalcum dragons closely and only returned to the logistics team when they needed supplies. Whether it was Andre or the logistics team, Liszt had to kill them all, in case the news leaked. Although he was not afraid of falling out with the Eagle Kingdom, delaying the news of the orichalcum dragons being stolen would make it easier to complete the Smoke mission. The Smoke mission required the 3 kingdoms to acknowledge the Fire Kingdom. As long as he dealt with the Eagle Kingdom, the Blast Furnace Castle and Steel Ridge should not be in trouble. After the Eagle Kingdom acknowledged it, List did not care how they fell out with him. Achi, help me search carefully. Andre should not be hunting at this time. He must be hiding nearby and spying when he heard the dragon roar. Okay. Crystal White Orbit and the Eye of Magic searched the vicinity of the Orichalcum dragon's lair at the same time. Although as a cheater, List did not care about talented people, he always had some resentment towards geniuses in his heart. Why could he improve so quickly by relying on the smoke mission? These geniuses could improve just by eating and drinking. Soon, List and Achi found a tent at the foot of the cliff of the Orichalcum dragon's lair. Without a doubt, this was where Andre lived. As the genius knight who attacked the Orichalcum dragons, he had been following the Orichalcum dragons, hoping to move the Orichalcum dragons with his indomitable spirit and give it a chance for a spiritual battle. He's not in the tent, but the bonfire has not been extinguished. He's hiding nearby. List scanned the area and had a clear idea. He raised his head and slowly looked at the towering cliff. As expected, near the top of the cliff, there was a humanoid figure made of magic. It was reflected in the crystal white orbit's vision. This guy must have been attracted by the dragon roar and wants to see what kind of dragon it is. He might even want to take advantage of the situation and ride two dragons at once. He smiled. Becoming one with the dragon, Xiao Chun charged toward the entrance of the cave. Meanwhile, Andre Sapphire, who was standing at the mouth of the cave and watching the battle between the three behemoths a dozen kilometers away, could not hold back the thought of reaping the benefits of the third party as List expected. Fight! Fight! It'd be best if the Orichalcum and the two young dragons are all crippled. The dragon was heavily injured, and that was his chance. But that dragon seems to be a fire dragon, and that light green dragon seems to be the light green gem dragon that the Eagle Kingdom lost? Andre had always been attacking the mountain copper dragons and didn't understand the current situation in the outside world. He only learned about the rise of a famous fire dragon knight in the Azure Wave Sea during the process of resupplying. However, it was said that the fire dragon only had a wingspan of 20 meters. It was much smaller than the one in front of them. Only a year and a half had passed, so the fire dragon couldn't have grown so big. So this one wasn't the other one. The fire dragon has extraordinary battle prowess. If the Sapphire family didn't have the participation of the fire dragon knight, they would have been destroyed long ago. My grandfather and father's hatred could also be immediately avenged. But don't worry. Wait for me to ride the mountain copper dragon and personally destroy the Grand Duchy of Sapphire to fulfill grandfather's wish. He still remembered that when he helped his grandfather pluck a white hair from his head when he was a child, his grandfather said, "Everyone has to die, but I don't want grandfather to die." The young Andre said very domineeringly, "No one can't die except for the Lord of Dragon Domain. Then grandfather will be the Lord of Dragon Domain. I can't, only the Sapphire family has the chance. Andre will help grandfather become the Lord of Dragon Domain." Grandfather held him on his lap and said kindly, "Only a dragon can be the Lord of Dragon Domain. Grandfather doesn't dare to extravagantly ask to become the Lord of Dragon Domain. But if I can obtain a wisp of a dragon's soul and become an immortal lich, that's also very good. Andre, when you become a dragon knight, give grandfather a wisp of a dragon's soul as a birthday gift." Humph! Andre not only wants to give grandfather a wisp of a dragon's soul, but also a dragon. As a filial grandson, Andre still remembered the promise he made to his grandfather, the Bull Marquis, when he was a child. He looked at the two unfamiliar dragons that were being forced back by the mountain copper dragon and were at a disadvantage. His heart was burning, and he couldn't wait to ride the mountain copper dragon and leave these two dragons behind. Grandfather has already perished, so I will shoulder grandfather's wish. I will be the dragon knight and the Lord of Dragon Domain. However, before the burning in his heart could brew to a climax, a clear greeting suddenly came to his ears. "Young lad, did you lose this mountain copper dragon or this little fire dragon?" "Yes." Andre suddenly came to his senses and immediately pulled out the knight's sword that he carried with him. He turned around and was about to lean against the corner of the cave wall. His reaction could not be said to be slow. But when he raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice, he was almost scared out of his wits. A sparkling and translucent dragon that looked like flowing crystals was floating at the side of the cave entrance. On the dragon's back was a knight wearing silver-white armor and holding a large azure sword. His extremely handsome face was looking at him with a faint smile. Beside the knight, there was a beautiful girl wrapped in a magic cloak, but she was not looking at him. She was only watching the battle of the dragons in the distance. "Who are you?" Andrei suppressed his fear and asked with a trembling voice. He had been with the Eagle Kingdom for many years and had always been a member of the Dragon Knight Reserve program, but he had never seen or heard of such a dragon, although it did not look big at all. With only a wingspan of more than 10 meters, its beauty was breathtaking, like a mandala flower stained with dew. Its whole body was exuding a dangerous aura. "It seems that you did not lose these two dragons. Since you did not lose the dragons, you obviously have bad intentions by sticking your head out here and looking around. It is very likely that you are thinking about my dragon." As he spoke, Bart, who was spiritually connected with Liszt, suddenly released a terrifying dragon's might, oppressing Andrei, who was already trembling slightly, as if he was being strangled. Liszt jumped into the cave and grabbed Andrei, who was trying to struggle. He took out special handcuffs and shackles that could lock combat energy and directly locked Andrei up. Without strong resistance, a mere sword saint could not resist the strong oppression of the Dragon Knight. "Who are you? What do you want?" Andrei, who was thrown on the ground, roared. "Tell me where the logistics team of the Eagle Kingdom is." Liszt did not want to talk nonsense with the villain. "Who are you? Do you know what you are doing?" "I am the Dragon Knight candidate of the Eagle Kingdom. Behind me stands the Eagle royal family. Even if you are the Dragon Knight, you have to think carefully. I am not good at interrogating people. I should have brought a blood servant here." Liszt shook his head and suddenly raised the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword in his hand. "Since you are not willing to say, I will kill you first and then slowly find the logistics team of the Eagle Kingdom." Clang! The sword light suddenly appeared. Chapter 9:12. Achi, wait outside with Bard. The scene may be a bit bloody, so don't follow us. He signaled Bard and Achi to leave. Liszt personally carried the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword and rushed into the Eagle Kingdom's logistics team. Dragon fighting spirit and dragon might were used together to kill. The logistics team, including the knight and servants, were all buried under his blade. No one escaped. There was no scene of blood splashing. The fire-fighting spirit directly roasted the flesh when it cut it. Igniting a fire, the logistics team's camp was completely torn apart in the flames, burying everything. Looking at the rising flames, Liszt had some inexplicable emotions in his heart. Once upon a time, ordinary office workers on Earth, who felt it cruel to kill a chicken, slaughtered a group of people because of a decision made in a moment. Fortunately, the other party was a hostile force and a dragon snatcher. There were no ordinary people, so he did not blame himself. In the world ruled by the knight, weakness was the original sin, especially when it came to dragons. It was the Eagle Kingdom who made the first move. I was just fighting back. Moreover, you helped the traitor Andrei of Sapphire. Your crimes are unforgivable. Casually making an excuse as psychological comfort, Liszt shook his head and turned to leave the camp under the raging fire. From the first time he participated in a war, killing was no longer a psychological obstacle for him. As long as it was not the slaughter of civilians, the war between the knight was nothing more than a game to him. "Let's go, Achi." Liszt returned to the invisible dragon and glanced at Andrei. He wanted to kill him, but after thinking about it, he felt that he should be kept and given to the Sapphire Grand Duke. He could exchange some fighting spirit secret skills from the Sapphire Grand Duke, or some information about the Lord of the Dragon Domain and the Lich. However, soon he changed his mind. If I ride too many dragons in a short period of time, it may cause a strong sense of crisis in the Three Kingdoms. Perhaps I can disguise it and make it look like Andrei successfully rode the dragon and killed the Eagle Kingdom's logistics team, rebelling against the Eagle Kingdom. As for the Eagle Kingdom daring to let Andre ride the dragon, there must be a check and balance, but who could guarantee that Andre would not undo this check and balance? This kind of check and balance method shouldn't use family as a threat. Family doesn't have a strong binding force on nobles. It should be some kind of magic method like a contract or curse. With the existence of a chi, a magic shooter, and the huge group of mages in the Guild of Magic, it will not be difficult to resolve the contract. Even if Andre is killed by the contract or curse, what loss is there for me? It's decided then. He signaled Bard to capture Andre and rushed to where Ethan, Leo, and the Orichalcum dragons were fighting. He found a corner and left Andre there. Then, he rode Bard and charged into the battlefield. Wuxia! The formless dragon did not attack the Orichalcum dragon. Ethan and Leo also stopped attacking at the same time. The previous battle between the dragons had not been fierce. Roar! The Orichalcum dragon stared fearlessly at the formless dragon that had suddenly appeared. Oh! Leo also responded, unwilling to be outdone. Orichalcum dragon, I know you can understand the language of the wind. Why don't we put down our dispute and talk peacefully? I think there's some misunderstanding between us, List said loudly, breaking the tense atmosphere. He had already gotten information about the Orichalcum dragons from Andre. The Orichalcum dragons had obviously learned the language of the wind after being attacked by the night for a long period of time. Dragons were very smart. They could easily grasp the meaning of a few words. Communication was not a problem at all. The Orichalcum dragon glanced at List and responded with a look of looking at an ant. It did not bother to communicate. To show my sincerity, I've brought your favorite Tempest bird eggs and a secret barbecued tender steak, as well as some of your favorite fruits. List took out a batch of food from his space ring unhurriedly and placed it on the ground to show his attitude. In fact, he only brought the tender steak to reward Leo, Bard, and Ethan. Dragons generally like to eat beef. As for the Tempest bird eggs and a large amount of fruits, they were gathered from the logistics team's camp. These were all used by Andre to attack the Orichalcum dragons. He made use of it. He placed a mystifying dragon's soul fruit in the secret barbecued tender steak. This was a sudden idea. He had originally planned to defeat the Orichalcum dragon first before forcefully feeding it the mystifying dragon's soul fruit. However, the grudge of the gray-mouthed iron dragon Aun made him feel that perhaps he could be a little gentler with his methods. There would definitely be a difference in effect between riding a dragon in a daze and riding a dragon with a bow. Roar! The Orichalcum dragon squinted its eyes. Its golden scales shone brightly under the sunlight. Its pupils moved slightly and glanced at the food on the ground. It then let out a warning roar. This meant that it was unmoved by List's goodwill and did not want to have any unnecessary interaction with List. It even expanded the scales on its body and sent out a signal to attack. Since you're not willing to accept my goodwill, then we'll part ways here. List did not waste any time. He called out to the three-headed dragon and flew away. Sure enough, Leo and Ethan flew out of the Orichalcum dragon's sensing range, but Bard escaped into the material boundary and quietly hid at the edge of the Orichalcum dragon's sensing range. List took out a pair of binoculars and carefully looked at the empty space where the food was thrown. He stared at the steak that he had arranged. Because of the dragon might, there were no wild beasts or World of Warcraft nearby to eat. The food was lying quietly on the ground. The Orichalcum dragon was far away from the food. It lay on another mountain and did not eat. It was not known if it did not eat because it was vigilant, or because it was not hungry, or because it did not want to eat List's food. Brother, are we going to keep waiting? Achi asked curiously. Let's wait a little longer. When the sky turns dark, if it still doesn't eat, then I'll take the steak back. List was very patient. He had to be patient in order to tempt a dragon that had the intelligence of a human. Dragons had a special physique. No poison could poison them to death. Therefore, with a free meal in front of him, if it were List, he would definitely not waste it and would not be suspicious. The sky quickly darkened. The orichalcum dragon that had been lying there for a long time did not wait for the familiar little ant to deliver food to it. It was a little confused, but it quickly realized that the little ant might have been killed. It's that damned human and the three-headed scum that was willing to be ridden by the ant. The orichalcum dragon was an adult dragon. It had lived for hundreds of years and had come into contact with many humans. It knew how fierce humans were when it came to dragons. The dragon knight from before must have come to steal the dragon. Therefore, it had to kill the competitor first. Troublesome. It raised its head. It felt that there was no way it could rest in this place. The dragon knight would definitely come again and pester it again. It did not like the dragon knight from the bottom of its heart. It always felt that the quality of the dragon knight conflicted with its own. Could not see any shine of sacrifice. However, the orichalcum dragon suddenly remembered that the dragon knight seemed to have left a portion of the food before he left. He wanted to use some food to seduce it. Naive, childish, laughable. Was it a dragon that would bend its back for a bit of food? There was no ant in this world that was worthy of it lowering its proud head. I need to change places and see if there are any ants that are pleasing to the eye that can be my food. The orichalcum dragon flapped its wings and slowly walked to the empty space where the food was placed. However, before I leave, I should eat the food that the dragon knight left behind. Wouldn't that be perfect? It hated list, but it did not hate food. It walked over. The food was still lying there quietly. There were only a few real ants crawling on it. These little bugs did not react to the dragon's might. However, it only needed to blow a breath to kill all the ants. It was just a simple application of the dragon's mana. It then swallowed the basket of thunderstorm bird eggs in one gulp. The thunderstorm bird was an intermediate-level world of Warcraft. Strangely, the male bird was of the wind element while the female bird was of the thunder element. However, the eggs had both elements. After the gender was born, only one element was left. In its long life, the orichalcum dragon had a special liking for the thunderstorm bird eggs. However, the thunderstorm birds liked to nest in narrow caves. Thunderstorm birds were also very clever. Once the dragon's huge body appeared and the dragon's might was released, they would immediately flee. Thus, it was very difficult to find their eggs. After eating the eggs, the orichalcum dragon ate some fruits and finally looked at the tender steak. The steak was already cold and did not smell as fragrant as when it was freshly cooked. However, the orichalcum dragon sniffed and swallowed the entire steak in one gulp. SOSO. After eating all the food, it prepared to find a mountain to spend the night and leave the next morning. However, just as it flapped its wings, it suddenly felt sleepy. It shook its head hard, but it could not resist the strong drowsiness. Its eyelids were heavy. After a while, the orichalcum dragon could no longer resist the sleepiness and fell to the ground with a thud, crushing a large part of the forest. Snore! A loud snore resounded through the sky. Chapter 9:13. Amidst the loud snoring, List descended from the sky and landed beside the golden orichalcum dragon. The sky gradually darkened, but this did not stop him from taking out the crystal lamp, the magic flashlight, and carefully observing this huge creature. The classification of metal dragons was very interesting. Gold, silver, copper, iron, and tin all had corresponding dragons. Lead, mercury, titanium, platinum, and other metals also had corresponding dragons. Often, one metal had different dragons. Iron dragons could be divided into 5 known categories: Black Heart Iron Dragon, White Heart Iron Dragon, Maw-Mouth Iron Dragon, White Mouth Iron Dragon, and Gray Mouth Iron Dragon. Copper dragons could be divided into 4 known categories: Bronze Dragon, Copper Dragon, and Copper Dragon. But the orichalcum dragon did not belong to the category of Copper Dragon. It was a magical metal dragon. Orichalcum was an indestructible metal. It looked a bit like gold, but its color was brighter. Normal casting methods could not forge orichalcum. Only Iron Knight could forge it with fighting energy. The Taro family of Red Crab Island had an orders of chivalry that used orichalcum alloy to forge armor. It looked shiny and very cool. Clang, clang. List used the hilt of his sword to knock on the scales of the orichalcum dragon. There was a crisp metallic sound. Achee! If I infuse my dragon fighting energy and stab down, do you think I can pierce through the scale? Why would Big Brother stab it? Achee laughed. I don't like this guy. It looked down on me before. He was just joking. After confirming that the orichalcum dragon was completely paralyzed by the dragon enchanting fruit, he quickly found the dragon fang platform where the orichalcum dragon's neck and body was connected. Help me guard it. I'm going to start the spiritual battle. Okay. With Achee guarding him, List was very assured. He aimed at the dragon fang platform and sat down. Boom! A strange and wondrous feeling went straight to his head. The next moment, he was already in a shining golden world. In this world, everything was golden. Golden soil, golden trees, and a golden sun hung in the golden sky. In the center of this world, there was a huge transparent golden rock. There was a loud snoring sound coming from the rock. The orichalcum dragon was sleeping soundly within the boulder. The seven-colored radiance on its body was faintly discernible. This was the power of the enchanting dragon's soul fruit, enveloping it. Although it's not the first time I've used the mystical dragon soul fruit, every time I see the dragon in the spiritual world being paralyzed, I'm amazed by the power of the emerald dragon. I'm afraid that any dragon that eats the bewildering dragon's soul fruit will be bound by this power and be at the mercy of others. Leo ate and was ridden, Orn ate and was ridden, and now it was Copper Dragon's turn. Only the invisible dragon wasn't paralyzed by the mystical dragon spirit fruit. But that wasn't because the mystical dragon spirit fruit wasn't powerful, but because Bard had seen through the mystical dragon spirit fruit and refused to eat it. If it didn't see through it and ate it directly, it would probably be paralyzed as well. But even if the invisible dragon was paralyzed, it would still be very difficult to defeat it in a battle of the mind. That complex maze wasn't something a knight could complete. If it hadn't taken the initiative to lower the difficulty of the maze, List wouldn't have been able to win. What I need to do now is to break this rock. Standing in front of the 100-meter-tall rock, List already knew how to conduct the mind battle. If he wanted to win, he had to break this rock that symbolized the indestructibility of the copper dragon. It was hard to imagine how Andre would break this rock if he rode on the copper dragon. Even if he licked the copper dragon to its climax in reality, he still had to face this rock that was almost indestructible in the mind battle. Perhaps after a long period of pounding, he would eventually be able to break it. But the time for the mind battle was limited. The preparations that Andre and the Eagle Kingdom thought they were infallible were simply useless. A bootlicker will end up with nothing in the end, List shook his head. That's why I still prefer to use violent means. Just do it. He lowered his head and looked at the Azure Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword in his hand. With a flicker of his thoughts, the smoke on his body quickly entangled the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, and then the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword rapidly expanded into a sledgehammer. He took a deep breath. List suddenly brandished the sledgehammer and fiercely hit the golden transparent rock. 80! 80! 80! After 3 hits, the golden rock only trembled twice and didn't leave any marks. Obviously, a hammer would not be able to break this rock. He had to think of another way. If it were a native knight, he would probably be in a terrible fix, but List still had a lot of inspiration. The smoke entangled him again, and this time the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword changed from a sledgehammer to a drill. He took another deep breath, and the dragon's battle energy in his body patrolled around, casting the battle energy secret technique, spiral rotation. He then drove the drill in his hand to spin crazily. Ong 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 ong. An ear-piercing noise was produced between the drill and the rock. In the next moment, powder flew in all directions, and the drill had already broken through the outer layer of the rock. There's a chance. List's heart was at ease. He concentrated his thoughts, and the smoke became more solid. The drill in his hand also became faster and faster, and it worked vigorously, drilling through the outer layer of the rock bit by bit. The moment the outer layer was drilled through, the entire surface of the rock cracked from the drill. Kacha! The crack spread in all directions like a spider's web, quickly covering the entire surface of the rock. The orichalcum dragon inside the rock seemed to have a reaction, and its eyelids trembled slightly. However, it was quickly suppressed by the faintly discernible seven-colored light, unable to affect the rock. He pulled out the drill. List once again relied on the power of the smoke to transform the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword into a sledgehammer, and he hammered the drill. 80! 80! 80! With each hammer strike, the cracks would expand, and even smaller cracks would appear. 80! 80! 80! On the 10th strike, densely packed cracks finally crawled all over the rock. Under List's 11th heavy strike, the rock suddenly collapsed. After the dust settled, the orichalcum dragon had woken up at some point, and it was looking at List with a complicated gaze. It was a mix of confusion, unwillingness, shock, relief, and disappointment. But in the end, it still called out to List, "Roar!" With a leap, List was already riding on its dragon tooth platform. At this moment, the human and dragon's hearts were one, and there was no longer any difference between them. The orichalcum dragon flapped its wings, and its huge body suddenly soared into the sky, charging towards the golden sun in the sky. The sunlight was blinding, and its light covered the world. When the blinding light dissipated, List realized that he had already left the spiritual world and returned to reality. The orichalcum dragon under his butt was still letting out deafening snores, but it already had a strong telepathic connection with List. It's done. Chapter 9:14. No one knew that there were 4 dragons living in the Hungduan Mountains at this time. The Emerald Dragon Ethan, the Fire Dragon Leo, the Formless Dragon Bard, and the Orichalcum Dragon Marta. Marta was the name that List had prepared for the Orichalcum Dragon. It came from the game Monster Hunter that he had played before. In it, there was a rotten dragon nicknamed Zakawi, Marmtalet, who lived in the Land of Gold and was known as the Mother Goddess of Gold. The orichalcum dragon did not look like Zakawi at all, and it had nothing to do with gold. They were probably only similar in color. However, List's extraordinary logical thinking still linked them together. At dawn the next day, the orichalcum dragon Marta finally woke up. Its huge body was entrenched on the ground, and its mind was still in a mess. To it, last night was like a terrible nightmare, but what was even more frightening was that this nightmare was real. It stared at List, its dark, long, and narrow pupils flickering. "Marta, this is the new name I've given you. How about it, do you accept it?" List looked at the orichalcum dragon and said with a gentle smile. After a long time, the orichalcum dragon slowly turned its head and snorted, tacitly agreeing to everything. No matter how complicated the process was, in the end, List had won the battle of the soul. This was enough to subdue the dragon's pride and dignity, and it acknowledged him. In that case, Achi used the magic platform to contact Yevich and have him confirm the latitude and longitude of the sextant. We can take a look at the scenery of Snowstorm Mountain Duchy on the way back. With a leap, List landed on Marta's Dragontooth platform and instantly completed the connection between man and dragon. He then guided Marta through the Dragon Rider resonance and quickly entered Dragon Rider mode. For a Dragon Knight who was familiar with dragon riding, this process was very easy. Achi sat on the back of the invisible dragon, took out the magic platform, and contacted Yevich. Taking advantage of the reply time, List and Marta first flew to the supply camp that had been burned by the fire yesterday, leaving a few orichalcum dragon footprints to disguise the scene. They created the impression that Andre had ridden the dragon up the mountain and destroyed the camp, reversing the appearance of the Eagle Kingdom. After doing all these, when Zhang Xian rushed back, he received a reply from the Devil Altar. Achi received the coordinates and analyzed the specific location. "Brother, from here, 15 degrees to the south, fly about 1,000 kilometers, and you'll arrive at Yevich's location. 1,000 kilometers. It'll take a day and a night to fly. Let's go." With that thought in his mind, Marta flapped his wings and soared into the sky with a roar. Bard brought a chi and followed closely behind. Then it was Leo and Ethan's turn. Ethan's claws were still holding on to Andre, who was tied up, blindfolded, and gagged. This young knight who was hated by the Sapphire Grand Duke wasn't worth much. But if they could exchange him for some information about the Domain Knight and the Lich, it would be worth it. No matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. Even List, who raised 5 dragons, had to be diligent and thrifty. The team walked and stopped from time to time. When they left, their mood was completely different from when they came. They only felt that the sun was so bright and the moon was so bright. While he was riding, he communicated with Marta intimately to understand Marta's information in order to formulate a training plan. He also started to create the Orichalcum Dragon Knight, Dragon Fighting Secret Manual. Marta, do you know the copper-plated state? The copper-plated state was a natural ability of the metal dragons. Some dragons had it and some didn't. The gray-mouthed iron dragon Aun didn't have this ability. Strictly speaking, this should be called the gold-plated state. It was a protective method that the metal dragons used their supreme magic to form a layer of the same type of metal shell to strengthen the defense of the surface of their bodies. The gold-plated state of the Orichalcum dragon could be called the copper-plated state. Roar! Marta's answer was very domineering. He didn't know it, and he didn't need to know it because his defense was already strong enough. He didn't need these fancy abilities. It's a pity. Although you don't need protection, the knight does. If you have the copper-plated state at a critical moment, the Orichalcum Dragon Knight's combat power would definitely be off the charts. List stretched out his hand and flicked the golden scales on Marta's neck. It was hard to imagine how much strength would be needed to penetrate it. Perhaps he could only break it slightly if he used the full power of the Dragon Fighting Secret Manual. Roar! Marta was very proud of his powerful defensive scales. He also thought that his golden color was the most beautiful color, the most beautiful among the dragons. It was beautiful, but in front of Bard, who was like a flowing crystal, it was equivalent to a nouveau riche wearing a big gold chain. Regarding this, List didn't continue. He changed the topic. What's the state of your dragon breath? Is it a metal torrent? The purple copper dragon's metal torrent dragon breath could turn into countless bullet-like metal balls. The gray-mouthed iron dragon breath could turn into countless blade-like metal pieces. Roar! Marta's answer was no. Its dragon breath was a special kind of magic that was extremely malleable. It could turn into a shield to block attacks, a spear to pierce through the enemy, or an object wrapped in a thin film. It could also recover the orichalcum formed by the dragon breath into a magic form. Under List's strong request, Marta decided to show off its dragon breath. The dragon opened its mouth and spat out a golden stream of air. It quickly turned into a huge javelin against the wind and shot towards a mountain. The orichalcum javelin pierced into the mountain. The powerful impact almost shattered the entire mountain. It was very powerful. Then it flew close to the ground. When it passed by the mountain, it opened its mouth, and a golden stream of air flew out from the original javelin. It was swallowed back into its stomach. Although it could recover it, the process of releasing and retrieving it still consumed some supreme magic. Of course, this amount of supreme magic was nothing to an adult orichalcum dragon. It had already lived for 200 years, and the supreme magic stored in its body was enough for a long time. A very powerful move. I've decided. This move shall be called Dragon Breath End. List instantly thought of the T-1000 in Terminator. It was a Terminator robot made of liquid memory metal controlled by thoughts, and it could transform freely. Then he thought of something else. Then, Marta, can you recover all the orichalcum? I mean the orichalcum that might not be produced by you. Marta replied that he could not. The orichalcum spat out by the dragon breath end would still have supreme magic properties for a short period of time. However, as time passed, these supreme demons would dissipate after an hour. Orichalcum without supreme magic was basically no different from ordinary orichalcum. Could not be recovered. In that case, why don't we trade resources? Marta, I'll use all my resources to support you from now on. delicacies, potions, everything. How about you spit out a 10-meter-long orichalcum dragon spear for me now? He had a 5-meter-long alloy dragon spear, Thunder's Fury. When used with Bard and Ethan, a 5-meter-long dragon spear was enough. However, Marta was 80 meters long and had a wingspan of 75 meters. A 5-meter-long dragon spear was seriously unsuitable. It had to be 10 meters long to be able to be used with the dragon's fighting technique. Since Marta had such abilities, he could use it to make a 10-meter-long dragon spear. A dragon spear made of pure orichalcum did not need any Iron Knight forging techniques. It was a powerful weapon on its own. Marta felt List's bewitchment. He turned his head and looked at List. List looked at it with a smile. The man and dragon flew for a full 50 kilometers while staring at each other. Their minds were in a stalemate. In the end, it was Marta who lost. In the game between the dragon and the knight, perseverance was victory, and perseverance was one of List's best qualities. Unwilling to give up, it opened its mouth and aimed at List. It gently spat out a golden stream of magic power, which turned into a 10-meter-long dragon spear as thick as a finger. The spearhead was sharp and conical, and the spear shaft had spiral and twisted patterns. The end of the spear gradually thinned and could also be used as a spearhead. This 10-meter-long orichalcum dragon spear was made according to List's wishes. He grabbed it in his hand and felt as if it weighed 10,000 kilograms. If not for his strong physique and the support of his fighting aura, he would not have been able to lift it. He tried to dance it. It was heavy and stable. Although he was not yet familiar with it, it felt very good. This is the dragon spear I want. He infused the dragon's fighting aura, and the orichalcum dragon spear instantly burst into bright red flames. It was like a superconductor in conduction of fighting aura. Marta, charge with me. Under the guidance of his thoughts, the man and dragon began their first charge. They swooped toward a steep mountain not far away. The golden wings folded and flew past the mountain. At the same time, List waved the orichalcum dragon spear and blasted out a flame slash that was a mixture of dragon magic and dragon's fighting aura. It smashed into the top of the mountain and directly cut off more than half of it. Amidst the loud rumbling sounds, countless gravel rolled down the valley and broke countless trees. Chapter 9:15. It was indeed a pleasure. However, not far away, Leo roared in dissatisfaction. It was very dissatisfied with List's increasing number of dragons. This put List in a very difficult position, and he gradually felt that his energy was running out. A normal dragon knight had to spend their whole life to train one dragon, but he had to train so many in such a short time. It was really difficult. Now he could only hope that he could brand his image in the minds of some of the resource dragons as soon as possible, and then find suitable knight or dung scooper for them. Emily was temporarily designated as the Dragon Knight of the Light Emerald Dragon Ethan, and Ethan was about to form a soul brand. It's not enough. Emily alone can't help at all. She can't take the burden of taking care of the dragons. It seems that when I go back, I have to select a group of talented children from the orphans and focus on training them. I hope that in a few years or 10 years, these children can become qualified Dragon Knight. It was too difficult to become a Dragon Knight. All the kingdoms were carrying out the Dragon Knight selection program, but not every dragon could find a suitable knight. Many dragons had been absent for decades or even centuries. Without the cooperation of the Dragon Knight, it was a big problem to only rely on the soul brand left by the first-generation Dragon Knight. The kingdoms could not command these dragons at will, and some dragons would not give face to the king when they were angry. They also had to provide a lot of resources for the daily consumption of the dragons. It's best to issue a few fake missions about talents so that the good seedlings can't be buried. In short, as more and more dragons were riding, List felt pain and happiness at the same time. The sun rose and set. At the beginning of June, Marta the Mountain Bronze Dragon and Ethan the Light Emerald Dragon stayed in a forest to rest, and the little fire dragon Leo returned. Riding the invisible dragon Bard, List and a chief flew straight to the designated location. It was a small city in the Snow Wind Principality. It was the territory of a viscount. Yevich considered himself as the Eagle Kingdom's exploration team and hooked up with this viscount to talk about border smuggling. Therefore, they temporarily stayed in this small city called Fritillary City. Fritillary was a big colorful bird that looked like a chicken, and Fritillary City was famous for its abundance of fritillary. Kansas Highland Barley, the Viscount of Baimu City, was the lord of this place. He had a Highland Barley elf. The Highland Barley here was very similar to barley, and it was not known if they were the same species. In a manor bought by Yevich outside the city, List and Achi walked out of the material boundary and saw Clear Water Sword Master Yevich Waterpeanut, whom they had not seen for more than half a year. There were also 2 other Sky Knights and a large number of expedition members. Your Highness! Yevich was very excited to be able to meet Sir Lord in a foreign country thousands of miles away. The expedition team that followed him were also very excited. Yevich, I'm very satisfied with your dedication during the voyage. You've also contributed greatly to the Fire Kingdom's expansion of their territory. I will officially confer you the title of Earl. After the Fire Kingdom is established, I will immediately grant you the title of Earl. List didn't bother with pleasantries. He first took out a carrot to reward the knight. Yevich was so excited that he almost burst into tears. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. Yevich is willing to fight for Your Highness. When he was young, he became famous in the Dragon Knight plan. However, after several twists and turns, his title of Earl was not smooth, and he didn't have a good relationship with several lords. He thought that his life would be wasted, but unexpectedly, he was conferred the title of Earl in the unestablished Fire Kingdom. This is the title and land you deserve. In the future, the Fire Kingdom will still need your continued contribution. List comforted Yevich and turned to look at the other 2 Sky Knights. They surrendered to List during the Battle of the Sea and later joined the expedition team. They had worked hard to discover the 3rd archipelago, supply the main island, and investigate the Kingdom of Yellowstone, so they were also conferred the title of Viscount. They were restored to the title they had before they surrendered. The land was also conferred after the country was established. The other knight of the expedition team were conferred the title of Lord Knight or Baron. The sailors who were serfs were also promised by List to restore their status as free people and grant them land. In fact, as long as they were fire people, he would gradually arrange for them to become free people, paving the way for the future knight class. The Moonkillers were the main force of the serf class. However, he would also train a group of knight class among the Moonkillers to divide them. It was not impossible for the talented Moonkillers to be promoted to Dragon Knight. The little girl named Hippolyta was one of the first batch of Moonkillers trained by List. Because she sheltered a few elves, he had a good impression of Hippolyta and decided to make her a noble in the future. The little girl's talent in magic was very poor, and she had already switched to learning Qi, but he did not know if she could achieve anything. You don't have to worry about getting nothing for your efforts. As your lord, I will not forget any knight who fought for me. Land, wealth, women, elves, as long as you follow me and dedicate yourself to me, I can give you everything you want. We are willing to charge for His Highness. The knights who had just been promoted to nobility shouted excitedly. They could not wait to immediately mount their war horses and charge into battle to repay His Highness with their lives. After some commotion, the knights were dismissed, and they continued to do what they were supposed to do, which was to gather information. List kept Yevich and the other 2 Sky Knights to inquire about the details of the investigation. Yevich narrated, "We have done detailed investigation of the Snowwind Mountain Duchy and the Kingdom of Yellowstone according to Your Highness's instructions. However, because of the lack of time and manpower, most of the information was obtained through the channels of the local nobles, so it may not be very accurate. In the era of the knight who basically relied on walking for transportation, the sparse population would greatly limit the flow of information. Perhaps the knight of the Snowwind Mountain Duchy did not even know that there was a Grand Duchy of Sapphire on the sea, and even the Duke of the Snowwind Mountain did not know that there had been a dragon-slaying battle on the sea. The Snowwind Mountain Duchy and the Eagle Kingdom did not have any official diplomatic channels or trade channels. Give me a general idea. The Kingdom of Yellowstone has 6 vassal states. The situation of the dragon and the Dragon Knight is unknown. Among them, the Snowwind Mountain Duchy is in the north of Yellowstone, but because of the ice field and the fact that the Eagle Kingdom has never explored the south, there is little communication between the two states. The main way of communication between Yellowstone and the Eagle Kingdom is through its other vassal state, the Grand Duchy of Dragon Spring Lake. It was said that the Grand Duchy of Dragon Spring Lake had 2 dragons. Not only was it adjacent to the Eagle Kingdom, but it was also adjacent to the Blast Furnace Kingdom. It was the only official channel between Yellowstone and the Eagle Kingdom. Because the distance was too far, it was difficult to find information there, so Yevich did not know much. He mainly knew about the Snowwind Mountain Duchy. Most of this duchy was located on a plateau. The name of the country originated from the perennial snow and high mountains. The surname of the dragon-raising family was Cornflower, and the current duke was called Skola Cornflower. Cornflower was a blue flower, a very common plant that could be found all over the legendary continent. The Cornflower family was not named because of this small blue flower, but because the family raised a cornflower jewel dragon. Cornflower is used to refer to a color, a shade darker than blue. The Snowwind Mountain Duchy was very poor. The knight class was poor and so was the duke. Because they only traded with the Kingdom of Yellowstone, the price of the country's products, including cornflowers and sapphires, was lowered by the Kingdom of Yellowstone, which led to a very poor and backward life. If he wanted to conquer it, he only needed to use the gold dollar strategy, and he could definitely recruit half of the knight. Even if he had enough money, the Snowwind Mountain Duchy would dare to rebel against the Kingdom of Yellowstone. Duke Skola had once launched a war against the Kingdom of Yellowstone. Although he lost in the end, he was forced to pay a large amount of supplies. Based on this information, List felt that he could secretly annex the Snowwind Mountain Duchy, just like how he secretly annexed the Duchy of Grey Iron. Then, using the Snowwind Mountain Duchy as a cover, he could quickly gain a foothold in the legendary continent. Yevich, do you plan to return to Flame Island to work? Or do you want to continue working here? I plan to take over the huge wasteland near the sea at the junction of the Eagle Kingdom, Snowwind Mountain Duchy, and the Kingdom of Yellowstone, and make it a part of the Flame Kingdom. With this as the foundation, I can start trading with the 2 kingdoms or war. He casually drew a circle on the simple map that Achi had just drawn. It circled an area of at least 1,000,000 square kilometers. Then, he expressed one meaning, rob. The sea could no longer satisfy his appetite, and he had to start encircling the land. Of course, for the time being, he could not risk being attacked by the 2 kingdoms and openly rob. After 3 to 5 years, it would be convenient to carry out this plan after stabilizing the base camp of Flame Island. For the Kingdom of Yellowstone, you can first contact the Snowwind Mountain Duchy and encircle the land in the name of the Snowwind Mountain Duchy. Sooner or later, there will be a war with the Eagle Kingdom. At that time, no matter what, we can just have a few more dragon-slaying wars. List pointed at the map. His eyes were filled with disdain and dominance. I have the invisible dragon. I have the multi-headed dragon, and no one can stop me. Chapter 9:16. He asked Yevich to prepare a batch of mother-of-pearl eggs that could be hatched. List did not stay in Mother-of-Pearl City for too long. Snowstorm Mountain Principality was remote and there was nothing to visit. He directly led his dragon legion and flew in the direction of the sea. Of course, considering that Achi was eager to go back and summarize the information collection and improvement of the magic array, he asked Bard to take Achi through space and return to Reed City. He rode on Marta and brought Leo and Ethan with him, flying slowly behind them. It was the first time the mountain copper dragon Marta came to the Flame Islands. He did not know the way and needed someone to take him. He also wanted to take this opportunity to get to know Marta and lay the foundation for the first generation of Dragon Knight's spiritual imprint. When they arrived at the Endless Volcano, it was already June 6th. Leo returned to his dragon lair, Doomsday Volcano, and concentrated on his training. Ainfint, the great elf, took the opportunity to satisfy his craving. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple also excitedly circled around Leo a few times. The three birds had grown up a lot and were very obedient under Ainfin's training. Even under Ainfin's comfort, List also rode the three birds for a while. It could be seen that this super dragon beast called Phoenix could be tamed as a mount. It's a pity that there are mounts, but there are no qualified knight. At the very least, it needs to be a young and promising fire attribute elite Earth Knight to be able to ride these blazing dragon birds and form a branch of the Burning Legion, the Imperial Knight Regiment. Of course, 3 blazing dragon birds are still too few. The next time I hear about the Phoenix, it's best to catch another batch and breed them. The super dragon beast's body was a treasure, and part of its body would hide its soul, just like the dragon's teeth, which involved some kind of special change. This inspired the next stage of the Dragon Knight's training. He and Achi both deduced that the Dragon Knight must study the soul to break the shackles. That is, spiritual power. Matter, magic, and spirit were the 3 basic rules that made up the world. As the pinnacle of power, the Dragon Knight had to start from these 3 basic rules if it wanted to break through. There is also a Thunder Dragon Turtle on Black Horse Island. The shell is the same as the tail feathers of the Flame Dragon Bird. But I don't have enough super dragons. When I have time, I should go to the Pegasus Forest and look for unicorns with wind attributes. He had gotten the clue about the super dragon unicorn for a long time, but he had never found the time to look for it. He did not know whether the unicorn existed or whether it had been captured by the Knight of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. He shook his head. Hopping off the blazing dragon bird, he waved at Ainfint. Ainfint, I'm leaving. I'll see you in a few days. Well, List, bring me some blue soft jade powder. I want to change my taste, Ainfint said. No problem. After leaving the volcano of Doomsday, List thought of an idea. He brought Marta the Orichalcum Dragon and Ethan the Emerald Dragon and flew straight to the Hourglass Valley, the sacred mountain of the Moonslayers. There was a sacred tribe at the foot of the mountain and 6 broken statues of ancient archmages. The terrain of the Hourglass Valley was very good, and it was the absolute center of the Flaming Island. There was also the entrance to a relic waiting to be excavated. Maybe I can build my royal city here. The ancient archmages chose to build a relic here after careful selection, and when the natural nodes of the relic entrance are sorted out, I can directly build a teleportation circle so that the royal city can quickly communicate with other places. It would be best if I could directly communicate with the legendary continent. While he was thinking, the Hourglass Valley came into view. Roar! Roar! Marta and Ethan let out a deafening dragon roar at the same time, reminding the sacred tribe in the valley that a dragon knight had arrived. Their great Seiki had returned. In the language of the moon, Seiki meant saint. Back then, List, who rode the invisible dragon, successfully subdued the sacred tribe and made the Moonslayers worship Seiki. At this time, Sassamit was enjoying the gentle massage of the Moonslayers' shoulders in the tribe. He was in a very good mood. He was originally one of the many ancient sorcerers in the sacred tribe. However, a sudden catastrophe caused the original listeners and the ancient sorcerers who were loyal to the listeners to be slaughtered. That unknown outsider Seiki, with his terrifying big lizard, had directly appointed him as the new listener of the holy tribe with his inviolable and brilliant heavenly might. From then on, Sassamit became the most authoritative person in the sacred tribe. Everywhere he went, everyone had to respectfully call him Su. Su, who was enjoying himself, suddenly heard 2 majestic and inviolable roars from afar. The sound was very special. Because of the distance, it was not too loud. However, the feeling of power in it made his scalp go numb. It was as if it was some kind of indescribably noble existence. What's that sound? He stood up from the Moonslayer's legs and quickly walked to the window of the wooden house. He looked in the direction of the sound. Su, is it a beast? A Moonslayer's replied. No, the sound is not right. I have never heard such a sound before. However, it is very familiar, very familiar. It is an unforgettable familiarity. Su could not help but recall another peculiar sound. Wuxia. It was the sound of Big Rid, who was next to Seiki. According to legend, the ancestor had fought side by side with Big Rid and killed the moon. Wuxia was different from Roar and Roar. However, the nobility and majesty contained in it were the same, giving him a feeling of submission from the bottom of his heart. He looked at the dark blue sky, nervously anticipating something. Suddenly, two small black dots appeared in the sky. The small black dots grew larger and larger until they eventually turned into two black silhouettes. Su's heart fiercely trembled at the sight of these two silhouettes. His breathing quickened and he nearly suffocated. Yes, it's Big Rid. Big Rid? The moon slayers in the wooden house turned pale with fright. They did not see Seth and his buddy Big Lizard, because when the firebird was unleashed, they fainted immediately. Only later did they learn that Seth had killed the previous listener and a large number of ancient sorcerers supported Su and laid down a rule that forbade harming sprites. If they were not allowed to harm sprite worms, they would not be able to produce magic power dust. This made many youngsters who wanted to become ancient sorcerers complain. However, Su strictly enforced this rule. Previously, when clansmen secretly killed sprite worms, Su discovered them and skinned them. Since then, no one dared to disobey. Su also said that the ancient sorcerers could not protect the tribe and that Seth would send them a new cultivation method, Knight. Because Seth was a great knight, a knight riding Big Rid. More than half a year passed, yet Seth did not return, nor did he obtain the knight cultivation method. Many youngsters questioned Su behind his back. However, Su was full of confidence. He had experienced Seiki's greatness and knew what Seiki meant to the sacred tribe. He was also willing to believe that Seiki would return. At that time, the sacred tribe would walk out of the forest and return to the great civilization of their ancestors. Big Rid, there are two Big Rid. It's Seiki. Seiki is back. Su shouted loudly. He ran out of the house and quickly summoned all the ancient sorcerers of the tribe before running towards the altar of the 6 statues. When they reached the altar, the two Big Rid, wrapped in boundless dragon's might, landed on the altar. Different from the flowing crystal-like Big Rid in Su's memory, the Big Rid this time had a head of light green gem and a head of brilliant gold. Their color, build, and posture were different, but what remained the same was the surging and suffocating dragon's might. Roar! Roar! The two Big Rid roared once more. After swearing their authority, they slowly retracted their dragon's might. Then, a knight jumped down from the back of the golden Big Rid. Tall, straight, handsome, mighty, noble, and unbearable. It was the Seiki in Su's memory. He immediately knelt down on the ground in excitement and shouted, Seiji, Big Lizard. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.